I will call to order this meeting of the Easthampton Planning Board for Tuesday, March 5th, 2019. Is there anybody here who would like to speak to anything that is not on the agenda tonight? All right, moving right along. We have planning board minutes. First up is January 15th, 2019. Everyone get a chance to look at those?
Yes.
Any errors or omissions?
I didn't see any.
I didn't either.
I motion to approve the minutes from January 15th, 2019.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? All right. And February 19th minutes for 2019. I was absent from that meeting, but
These were delightfully succinct.
the week I missed, you guys were able to...
Yeah. I motion to approve the minutes from Tuesday, February 19th, 2019.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And I will abstain. All right, so first up is an A&R for Brian Greenwood, 370 East Street. Someone here for that? Yeah, if you can go up to the podium, that'd be great.
It's not your first rodeo, huh?
What's that?
Not your first rodeo.
Oh, well, what do you need me to do?
So you want to just give us a quick rundown on what you're talking about doing here? It looks like it's moving, it doesn't really move the lot lines, it's sort of the backside of the lot.
Right, so what we're doing, my neighbor and I, John Jarvis here, have elected to, basically John is conveying a small piece of land to me. It doesn't alter the frontage on either property. It basically just reconfigures the land, which makes it a little more suitable for our purposes.
Okay.
So,
Planning department have any comments, issues?
No.
No. Anybody else have any questions?
No.
None. There's 100. Looks good. Motion to endorse the A&R for Brian Greenwood, 370 East Street.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Second.
Kristen.
Gotcha.
All right. We got copies?
Yep,
Need to
right
sign?
here. Yep.
While you're up there, and this isn't going to affect my decision, would you mind coming here just for a moment and taking a look at this? This little sliver right here. Help me understand that a little better.
Okay, so this is my property here.
Uh-huh.
So my property goes through here
Yep.
and then connects to this old field here. So this is John's parcel, which included that piece.
Got it?
What we did is the property bound has moved down essentially a 20-foot, 15-foot swath here. And then it's also gone this direction, which I think it's 30 feet. Yeah. So basically creates this pie. So right now, the issue in the past has been that I've got poultry. And they've always been kind of on the property line. There's always been a question exactly where that needs to be.
I see.
And just saves me from having to move it.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Are you doing else after 40?
Yeah, he's signing.
I'm almost done here.
That was a strategic delay.
That was it.
He's stalling for
Yes, that's right. Uh-huh.
Okay.
How many?
What's that? Well, it's varied over the years. I mean, we've had as many as 21. But we've also got goats and everything else. But so back before John bought that property, the fencing and everything else was kind of loosey-goosey because the neighbor didn't really care. And, he's like, do whatever you want back there, have fruit trees, whatever.
Good neighbor.
Oh yeah, and then John is as well. But the issue's always been, everything's always been crowding that property line, so I just didn't want to be a problem in the future.
Because you're
What's that?
Because you're
Yeah, exactly. Well, I offered to take fencing down and move it, and then this was kind of a better solution for both of us.
How many goats?
Was it? Only 2 goats.
So no goat yoga.
Was it? No, we don't do goat. I was volunteered for that, but I haven't done it myself. Over in the past, we've had sheep, we've had even had a cow.
I just signed them all.
It's a great spot.
Jeff should have
I
it.
used to own this here too, and we sold it 2 or 3 years ago. So this was all kind of connected to here, but I've got all these like weird quadrants and
It is an odd design.
yeah.
Pleasure
Just
to
over
see
the
you.
years, that's the way it makes out. So
All right. Best of luck. Thank
All
you.
right, thank you.
Those 4 regular copies in the Mylar.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much.
Yep.
All right. Next up is Jeffrey Rowland for Topatico, seeking a special permit at 14 Industrial Parkway. Oh, boy, sure. Well,
So the camera
I
can
guess
see it too?
we're probably gonna want you to stay at the podium to talk, so if you need to point to it, that might be.
Well, put it over here.
Yeah, that's probably best so that you can stay in front of the microphone.
Somewhere in between the podium and that gentleman
How
there.
about there?
Perfect.
Sure. We've got copies in front of us, I think, right? So,
I'm gonna give you the updated ones.
okay.
Mike, let's close it.
Joe?
So did we get a letter from?
Yeah, I'm still trying to locate it.
So this supersedes these full copies that are right here?
Yes. Some revisions done, both in response to comments from Dan Murphy and in regard to some cost-saving adjustments we could incorporate. So. My name is Terry Reynolds, T. Reynolds Engineering, and I'm here representing Topatoco. Topatoco is on 14 Industrial Parkway, and what they would like to do is they would like to build an additional building to complement their current building, which is going to be a warehouse and eventually some additional office space. So it's a 6,400 square foot building, will be generally open. Initially, it's just going to be a bathroom in here and just open warehouse space. What's going with it is additional parking is required for the warehouse use and future associated office space inside. Currently, what we're proposing to do is to the original plans had it repaving the whole thing, and budget-wise, it's becoming an issue. So what we'd like to do is leave this as a paved, existing paved area, and then the new area needed will just be gravelled with a TRG. And
TRG stands for what?
trap rock, crushed trap rock.
Okay.
And then, so basically, we've got trash dumpster will be located over here. It's currently in the corner, it's moved to the other end. And then basically they're gonna, it's set up so that the truck can back in and do deliveries at this end with another access door in the middle and a regular pedestrian access here. The standard sidewalk around it, and then down front here are going to be proposed area for LP techs, which actually shown.
I'm sorry, you trailed off there at the
Is
end.
that propane, is that what you said?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah. So right here, some propane, because there's gas isn't available currently.
Okay.
So, water will be capped off with the existing service through the building into it. Same with sewer, it's ideally going to come off the existing service. That'll have to be investigated with a camera or something to determine if it is viable, and if it isn't, we're going to have to end up looking at possibly coming in with a whole new service.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
can you speak up a little more? I
They're
can't hear
loud
you.
in the other room.
Yeah.
Sorry. How's that?
A little bit more would be great.
Yeah, the microphone isn't going to amplify, it's just recording,
It's
so
recording, yeah.
you just got to
okay.
speak up.
All right, so anyways, so we have underground electric coming in on the north end here,
Yeah.
sewer on the north end, and then water coming in just below. There's been a stormwater system that was designed and basically intended so that we're not increasing any stormwater flows coming off the site. There's a subsurface detention system in here that will treat the parking lot area and the runoff currently coming to the corner here. Additionally, there's a swale system in the back with a V-notch weir to control the flows from the back of the site. And all flows have been designed, as I said, not to exceed the existing current flows coming off the site up through the 100-year event.
Is that report provided, or is there a report to the review on that? Or is
The report was provided
It was, okay.
to Dan. And I also did update it because I did have 7/100ths of an increase on, which really isn't within tolerance of the model, but for paper's, sake, I adjusted it to make sure that we're reporting.
And this is not within
At
a
or
buffer
below.
zone or anything with the, any wetlands or buffer zone or anything?
No, we got a comment from the conservation agent suggesting that maybe this is a wetland back here. However, it's not possible to be a wetland. There's no way for it to be connected to a water body of any sort. It is too small to be an isolated land subject to flooding. It would be good if she had looked at it.
Thank you.
Frankly.
I think it may be good to
So-
read that into the record so we can respond directly to the
Yeah.
comment.
I'm
It's a
sorry.
good comment. Yeah, I just gave Chris
My
mine.
copy, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so there was a email comment from the Conservation Commission, Mallory Larkham, Conservation Agent. It says, there are no mapped wetlands on the property via GIS. However, it appears that there may be unmapped wetland area located in the southeast irregular corner of the property, which may continue through neighboring properties until reaching an unnamed stream that flows south of several properties located on Industrial Parkway. The presence of wetlands in this area would also be consistent with the stormwater swale proposed on the plan set, which plans to direct flows to this area. I would recommend that the planning board seek clarification on the presence of any wetlands on the property or within 100 feet from the property from the applicant. The presence of wetlands in direct relation to a new stormwater discharge would require a notice of intent and would mean that the stormwater management permit in accordance with the Easthampton Stormwater Ordinance has been misfiled with the planning board. So your contention would be that that's not a wetland?
No way there's a wetland there.
Well, it's not a mapped
Well, put it this way.
Yeah.
If there's a wetland there, it's not jurisdictional. The only wetland that could be there would be a very small, isolated wetland that might be federally regulated and only if you were trying to fill it.
But you haven't done any wetland delineation out on the site to determine if, because there is a lot of wet areas around this property.
I'm very aware of that to the south and so on. This drains to a low point right here. And on the other side of this low point is a swale on the Dietz property that connects to the city storm sewer. So it does not connect to any water body. And that's the definition of a BVW.
One more quick question on that, if I may. You've changed some of the proposed bituminous surface here by doing gravel instead of asphalt.
Yes.
Which I'm sure is going to affect the stormwater plan. The stormwater plan hasn't been redone.
Yes, it has.
So the one I have here, what accounts for the change to no longer using asphalt for parking?
What, going to gravel?
Mhm.
It's essentially the same.
Essentially the same, but it hasn't accounted for it in the stormwater management plan.
You
Not a
lose
trick
the
question.
name.
Okay.
It's the same. It's if anything, you have less of a runoff.
I would think it'd be less too, it'd be better, but
But I mean, in
it's not accounted for.
actuality, you shouldn't be modeling gravel as anything but impervious area. Yeah, you have gravel that should be modeled at a 96 compared to pavement at a 98.
I would agree it would be better. I'm just saying that your stormwater management plan was modeled on having pavement there, not having.
Yes. I didn't seem that it
No,
didn't
so I
seem
understand.
worthy of even bothering with that.
I just wanted to know if it was accounted for.
Yeah, no, what was done was I did change the design of the subsurface system to account for that 7/100ths on the 100-year event.
Yep.
So that did get redesigned along with the slight changes in the orifice setup for the outlet control.
There's no change into the existing building, is that right? They're gonna keep using that?
Right.
And what do they actually do?
That's a good question.
Just out of curiosity.
I would have Jeffrey come up here and he can explain that to you.
No, that's fine. We are an online retail store, and we
Let's come up to the microphone,
okay.
please.
We're an online retail store, topatico.com, and we basically warehouse and ship for creators, independent creators all over the world, T-shirts and comic books and
This is like that movie 40-Year-Old Virgin where the woman does the online warehousing and doesn't have a physical location, but she does. Yes, no?
I never actually saw that.
Oh.
It's, okay, that's eBay? All right, yeah. We actually have a 6,000 square foot space in the basement of Eastworks right now that this is meant to replace.
Okay, interesting. Thank you.
Does the change in paving in any way affect the number of spaces you're intending? Obviously, you won't
No.
mark them anymore, but you're still intending the same number of slots there?
Yes.
Because you sort of show it on the map still as if they're delineated, but they won't be because it'll be gravel.
Well, it'll be hard to delineate them with gravel.
Yeah,
Right.
obvious.
I mean, they could be delineated with sign spaces or something like that, but
And there's 17 spots?
the
is what you
intent,
intend?
ideally down the road, it'll get paved. It's just budget-wise, it was a cost savings.
So, Jeff, how do we handle this where we have a comment from Concom that says that they think there may be wetlands and the applicant is asserting that there aren't?
Yeah, I think there are, I think overall the project concept is pretty straightforward. The construction of a new building, I don't think that in and of itself is a significant change to the property. I think there's two issues that need a little further resolution, I believe. One is the drainage and the potential change from TRG to, from pavement to TRG, and I think I understand the engineer's comment that it's not a substantial change. Do you know when the changes got presented to the city engineer?
2 days ago.
Okay, so I think, and I think the applicant was asking me where his comments were, and what's happening is we've got 3 projects tonight, all of which have changes presented basically tonight. So the city engineer does not have a comment in response to the new plan, so I apologize because I was looking back. So there's I think there's
he said he was looking at it when I talked to him this afternoon.
Yeah, I think there's an element of catching up with the changes. So I think that's going to be the biggest hurdle with the planning board tonight in terms of drainage. I think it's just going to be catching up, allowing the time for the city engineer to look at the changes.
So you recommend delaying?
Well, it's going, the wetland, the questions around whether there are wetland soils in the vicinity and whether they're connected, I think is part of a larger question that is yet to be resolved. And so exactly how to resolve that is not abundantly clear at the moment. But one mechanism is to have a continuation and allow a little more opportunity for discussion with either the conservation agent or potentially a discussion with the commission about the question. So I think the agent posed a question to the board, and the agent hasn't had a chance to review the response or comment. So
Okay, so the agent, she can do, I don't wanna make the applicant go to Concom to find out that they don't have to go to Concom, right? So I'm trying to do this as painlessly as possible, but I don't know, I mean, Concom, for them to do an investigation is gonna take some time, but the conservation agent is capable of doing a field investigation sort of on her own?
no, I'm not sure that the agent actually would do that. I think the gap in communication is there has not been a clear communication with the applicant and the agent to understand what the question is or how to resolve it. So I don't
Okay.
know yet whether the agent has the authority to make any of these decisions or whether it has to go to the commission.
Okay. And, yeah,
Well, I was going to say personally, Jesse, I think it's important to let them have voice. But in this particular project, with the swale on the back end, and I absolutely believe the applicant that it's there on the other property, and the design of runoff that they have, most of it going in other directions, a small amount there, and they've got a plan for it, accounted for. I just think that it shouldn't be a big roadblock in this particular project. Just putting that out there.
In terms of
I don't
seeking
think-
additional input or
Yeah,
making a decision?
I think it's minor enough that a delay might not be warranted.
my only
have-
concern with that is the idea that we have to sign off on the stormwater plan and the impact, and if we don't know if there's a wetland on the property.
I understand.
And typically, this is something that we at least know from Concom, either that they've looked at it or that they don't need to look at it, and this is the first one we've had that's sort of,
Right.
we don't
Because
know.
there's so many wetlands and wet areas out there. That's the thing, is that a typical project like this, the applicant, correct me if I'm wrong, would actually, if there's a suspicion that there's wetland areas out there, that they would do some ground cores. It would take a half a day and determine what is the kind of ground, what is the soil looking like? Is it actually hydric soil, to figure out, is it a wetland area? And then they can figure it out from there as to where that ends, and it's just basically sticking a hole in the ground.
Can I
until you
just
figure out where it ends.
interject?
Please.
First of all, that isn't the process, okay? First of all, this has to be jurisdictional, okay? For it to be jurisdictional, it has to be BVW, land subject to flooding, or other resource areas that are within the Wetlands Act, okay? This area is too small to fall into land subject to flooding. You need
When you say
a
that, do you mean
quarter
like the
acre
area
that's a
on your
foot
property?
deep of water.
The area on your property is too small, or the area as global?
This
regardless
area
of
right
property
here,
line?
which is being suggested as a wetland.
Right, but wetlands go beyond property lines, right? So
Sure.
you
Yeah.
could have a wetland that's much bigger than that little wedge that goes on to many property
I know,
lines.
but I'm telling you, I've been out, I've looked at the site, it's very clear that there is a small depression here, it's a man-made depression, okay? And it does not connect in this direction at all. It connects onto the Dietz property, which is a gravel pit. He has a water quality swale, what he calls a water quality swale here, that ties into the city storm sewer northerly here, okay? So if Mallory were to go out there, she would see quite obviously that this is an area that cannot be jurisdictional. I mean, it's very clear. It's not possible for it to be jurisdictional that way.
And I understand what you're saying. It's really hard where, I mean, this is an issue where we tend to defer to the departments that have the expertise there, and that this comment is
I understand.
concerning, right? So like it's very,
Sure.
it's akin to when we tried to change the fence on the back of the, dispensary, and we're deferring to the police department. And I understand the applicant's frustration as well if this is something that could be verified by a site visit and the comment was made without the opportunity to have a site visit first.
It doesn't rise to the level that you should be paying a wetland scientist to come out and delineate it.
Well, and that may be the case, and I think, unfortunately, I think that this will likely cause a potential delay of this board's decision, but I think the argument being made is not the planning board's to decide.
Well, could we condition it, that the Conservation Commission confirm that it's not a wetland? If there's some question based on looking at a GIS and you see a woodland, and you say, I think there might be a wetland in there. It's pretty vague. I mean, there's no real indicator that there's a wetland in there from what she's looking at, other than there are wetlands in the general area.
Jeff, what was the first item you mentioned about the stormwater plan? Just that you think it should take into account the change in the surface material?
Well, I think, the chances are that it will be totally acceptable and conform to the previously prepared documents. However, it's not for certain. I mean, it came 2 days ago, so the city engineer has not had a chance to review it. So, and I understand that it's this rub between making it not a long stretched assumption or having belts and suspenders and having the documents that you need in front of you to render the decision. So, I mean,
All right, well, let's set those two issues aside and move forward at least with everything else for now, and then we can make a determination as to what we do next. To the extent there are other issues you mentioned the dumpster locations. We have that. What about snow removal? I know there's a lot of space on here. Is there a plan for sort of what to do with the snow?
In general, there's plenty of areas for snow to go. There's areas on top of where the subsurface system is.
Yep.
And also on the north area of the parking lot, and then in the front corner of the lot.
Which of those areas do you intend to use? Both?
Well, it would be mostly for the plowing back here would go here. And then it would probably most likely be along the edge here.
And I understand that we're sort of talking about internet sales, that sort of thing. What's the sort of frequency? I mean, we got to go back to the applicant. What are we talking about for deliveries, pickups, drop-offs on a regular basis?
We have UPS and FedEx trucks come daily. We have tractor trailer deliveries maybe once a week.
Okay,
that's about
and
it.
there's obviously ample space on this parcel and in the proposal to accommodate those
Yes.
trucks. I don't see that as an issue, and it's a relatively quiet industrial parkway back there. I don't think
Right.
that's much of an issue.
Can I ask how long you've been in business there at that location?
We've been there since 2013. We've been in business since about 2008.
Is it your intent, when this parcel goes in, that this will be an extension of your existing business? You're
Yes.
planning on renting this out to them? So is this going to increase the traffic?
Not significantly.
You said you thought you might have 4 additional employees for the new building?
The employees that are currently at Eastworks would move over there, so yeah, there's about 4 people.
And obviously, you don't have foot traffic. It's not a retail establishment, so you don't have that sort of a traffic concern.
Right.
What's in this space right now as far as vegetation, trees, that kind of thing? Is it empty field?
It's a lawn area.
Yep.
It's generally flat. It's underlain with clay, so it's also wet.
So no tree removal or anything like that that's anticipated?
Tree removal.
That's easy enough. About lighting?
Lighting is just going to be wall mount lighting, safety lighting, the doorways and such.
On the sides of the building?
Yeah.
Can you point to me where that's going to go?
Well, it would generally be, there'll be lighting, this is an overhang. There'll be lighting underneath the overhang, and then there'll be lighting at the doorways. So this is an entrance that a fork truck can come and go, and then you have your entrance, your standard entrances. There are not a lot of night operation,
No.
so.
What are the typical hours?
Like normal.
Sorry to make you keep getting back out there.
May as well hang around.
Hang up there.
Normally around 10 a.m. to 6 or 7 p.m. depending on the season.
Okay.
We're obviously busier during Christmas.
Holidays, that sort of stuff, yeah. And lighting, downward facing,
Yeah.
dark sky compliant sort of stuff, are we talking about? Okay.
Yeah, and you can condition that, that's.
Yeah, I'm thinking especially, I mean, I don't want to call them wetlands, but with that habitat in the area, right, that's one of the concerns also is sort of making sure we're not having light pollution and that sort of stuff, so
Yeah.
that would be
Yeah, I mean,
good.
there's a building right here.
Yeah, I understand. I understand.
I just want to confirm on the, geez, what direction is that? I can't tell. from
North,
here.
there's the north
On the
arrow.
north side, and what, the west side, there's no lighting going on the building?
No. Well, there'd be a light over this doorway right here.
On that corner.
Okay.
Yeah. But, it'd just be a downward, stoop light.
And any machinery or anything that's being operated in there that's, creating noise or,
No,
no emissions or anything like that?
no, it's an electric forklift.
Electric forklift, okay.
Can I ask how many employees you have currently
Um,
on site at any one time?
Currently, we have on
Max.
site
The max.
3 full-time. The max would be 7.
And is that increasing? You said 4 from Northampton would come over. Would it go to 11 with the new building?
Seasonally.
So you're anticipating a max of 11 employees?
Yeah.
And any waste or production of waste that's other than sort of, typical household kind of garbage stuff?
Just a lot of cardboard.
Cardboard, yeah. And you obviously already have service for that sort of pickup already, which will continue.
Yeah, we have a cardboard dumpster.
Great. I don't have any other questions. Anybody else before I open this up?
I just have a
Jeff?
couple, just about the parking. Do you have an understanding of how ADA requirements would fit with this proposal for the increase in parking for the new building?
Yes.
Is there, okay, can you explain your understanding of the ADA requirements for parking?
No.
Like a hit?
We're not providing ADA
Yeah.
parking.
There's no
We're not.
handicap parking at all?
No, currently no.
Okay.
So is it your understanding in the building code that there's no trigger for creation of at least one handicap space for the new?
For this
Build out.
use, I'm not sure there is.
Okay.
I would defer to the architect for that, but, if we needed to add a handicap ramp, that's not a problem.
It's
Right.
ground level.
The building's at ground level, so that, yeah, so.
So it's really just the question of whether you need to designate a space
Yeah,
Right.
in a lot that doesn't have marked spaces anyways.
It would have to be a paved spot and a space that has to be paved.
With the space next to it?
With the
Right.
stripes. So that
But
you
yeah,
guys have to
it
pave
actually
that
doesn't
one
have
area.
to be paved, but it has to be a solid surface.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it could be concrete.
It's just going,
Yeah,
so.
well, I mean, you can do a hard packed gravel, but
Right.
it's not ideal.
I mean, I just go back to the idea that some of this just seems to be catching up the changes to, the question about whether ADA is required, so that some of the notes still sort of indicate stripe all parking areas, including, crosswalks and accessible routes. That's probably a standard kind of note, but with the change to gravel, there isn't really striping or there's no stop bars. It's just a little bit of the details are, so the revision date's yesterday, so I would think that it's a question about ADA. I don't know for sure. That's definitely a building commissioner question, but typically the board factors that into the plan approval
So
process.
Does the building commissioner review this?
So the change is, he has not reviewed the changed plans.
But I mean, he reviewed the original plans.
Yeah, I think certainly ideally, there's a review prior to this planning board meeting, but, it's progressed fast, so I can't speak for whether the
Because
building commissioner has seen it.
we've already been delayed one meeting because of the confusion on applicability. So that's why I'm kind of trying to push this forward, because originally we thought that it wasn't allowed. And then we determined that it is an allowed use.
Right, and then it got filed at the clerk, with no
Right,
meeting,
so-
in advance, so it just made it a little more challenging. to-
Right, so that's why I'm trying to push it along, because, they're financing construction season. There's a very limited window for his metal building, so on. So we're just trying to keep this moving along.
Yeah, understand.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, there's just a few things here that I
Sure.
don't think have enough information on for us to make this decision. And
Right.
I think that, I mean, for me personally, I just feel like we need to, and I expect it's very likely that this will all be quick answers and hopefully no added problems other than a 2-week delay. Which I personally don't feel like we can avoid that in this
I agree.
situation, and I understand the frustration. I really am sympathetic, and I don't know. We're just not in a position to answer these questions ourselves.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, as a board,
understand.
that's our charge, is to make sure
Right.
that all the
Sure.
i's are dotted
Yeah.
and t's are crossed, so.
Well, I understand if you haven't gotten the engineer response and you didn't get a comment as far as ADA from the building.
Well, also, I
perspective.
think, again, just speaking for myself, I mean, I think any one of these three may be enough, maybe small enough where I could sort of say that's probably not an issue,
Yeah.
but all three of them together sort of just prompt me to say, let's just make sure that we're not cutting any corners here.
And that's really how I feel about it as well, as it's
I
the
appreciate it.
conglomerate. But I think it's imperative that we work at this meeting to try and give you a comprehensive list of what we're gonna need, so that as we schedule it in, hopefully at our next meeting, you'll be able to have everything ready to go.
I don't know that it even sounds like it's anything that the applicant needs to do. I feel like
Well, you
it's,
should follow up on it certainly to make sure that the i's are dotted. and the
Well, I
t's are
think
crossed.
one of the more challenging questions is related to whether or not there would be wetlands.
I
Wetlands,
don't
so
agree, but.
Right. But I think so. This board is not the board who decides whether you are right or not. So
Right.
that seems to be the most important thing. It's on top of the list. And in terms of process, it's just a little bit unclear. When there's a disagreement on the question, especially the answer. I do know that the Conservation Commission meets March 11th, but I am not sure the process to get on the agenda to possibly appear before them, because I think they are the group who you would like, I think you need to make those
Well,
arguments
we're not
to
doing a
the commission.
filing, I guess is my feeling. There is an agent in town. I think it would be reasonable to ask the agent, I'm glad to meet the agent out there
Mhm.
and look at it.
the agent's comments are what prompted this inquiry, right? I think if we didn't have that email, I would certainly take the applicant at their word, because no one has told us that there's an issue. So
Right.
I would say, and I can't speak for Mallory certainly, but it would seem to me that she is equally capable of going out to the site with the applicant and either leaving her comments in the record, in which case we can figure out what the next step is, or hopefully looking at it and seeing what Terry's saying and saying, okay, you know what, This has sort of eased my concerns. I don't think there's a problem. I can withdraw that comment, and
Right.
we at least would know that.
Right.
I mean, obviously, there's a scenario where there's other conclusions drawn and the process turns into something different, but it sounds like the most likely one is going to be, let's get some eyes on it, and hopefully that's something that Mallory can do.
Right. I mean, I could propose a scenario which the board does not like, which would be to create a meeting specifically to continue this.
Yeah, next
Right,
Tuesday.
next Tuesday. So
I love
because
those.
because I can see, I think the chairperson highlighted there's a scenario that is completely beneficial to the applicant, which would be that the agent goes out, the agent is convinced, and the agent can sort of acknowledge that there are no wetlands or there's no issues. There is a commission meeting on the 11th in case that was necessary. The board could potentially convene on the 12th to have the applicant come back and give an update. And I think that would be, you know, there's a worst case scenario, which would be that there is some need to actually file something with the Concom, in which case you would know and you could update the board next Tuesday, and the board could then continue out to a further date if that were the outcome. So it's a good potential way to just.
And I think we can also get an answer from the city engineer
Yeah,
about the
city- yeah.
stormwater, and
Yeah.
also a quick answer about whether or not the ADA
Right.
requirement applies. And I think that it's very likely that next Tuesday you've got, you know, gold stars for all three of them, and we can just proceed on Tuesday. Does that work for you?
Yeah.
I would, before we move on, I would just like to ask if there's anybody here with any comments or questions, wanting to speak to this applicant? Okay.
Okay, so we're talking Tuesday.
The 12th?
The 12th.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'll make a motion, but before I do, can I ask, do you feel like you know the things that need to be done?
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken with Dan Murphy. I'm pretty confident
Okay.
that we're not gonna have an issue. I expected that he had written a letter this afternoon, so I'm not sure what happened there.
Okay.
But in terms of the conservation, that's fine. And I'll check with the architect on ADA requirements.
Sure, that'd be helpful, and we can have the building inspector,
Yeah.
or we can even look at it ourselves probably.
Building
planning.
inspector, yeah.
Yeah, I would encourage you to talk to the building commissioner as well, and then just taking a look at the notes and updating the notes to match the change to the TRG. So shouldn't have striping, you know, if you're gonna propose
Definitely check the
parking,
ADA.
stop bars,
Mhm.
you know, typically they're shown to indicate, you know, upon certificate of occupancy that those stop bars are on the plan and those will be,
Yeah,
so I think clarifying the
Yeah,
notes.
it's just a generic, typically try and put it on every plan.
Yep.
Right, but it's not really
In
a-
this case, I'm not calling for a stop bar.
Okay, so
Doesn't-
I would encourage you to take off the notes, because the people look at those and upon occupancy, there'll be a question of whether that was supposed to be there or not. So just, it's a good opportunity to clarify that.
Sure, okay.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the board?
I motion to continue the special permit for Jeffrey Rowland to Patico to March 12th at 6 p.m.
Second that?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
Thank you.
So,
Is this one me?
Yep.
You're recusing yourself? You want to make an announcement?
Yep, so I have a personal relationship with the applicant on the next matter, so I am going to recuse myself and leave everything in Mr. Zarvis's capable hands.
Where are you going to go? So I know
This
where-
room looks empty now, so I'll
I'll
have
get
that
you when
there.
you're done.
Feel free to let me keep that.
All right, we're going to take 60 seconds before I call you up, so just you can set up, but I need to pull out my materials here. Industrial. There we go.
I believe that if you do something
Okay.
where it's not something
Everyone swap out their stuff.
So, almost get you that
What's the next one?
This is the Tom
Yeah, Dan
Backus
is
and
not
Shelley,
here,
excuse me,
so-
Thomas Backus and Shelley Backus. Am I pronouncing that right? Is it Backus? Did I say it right?
Things that happen today too.
Okay, thank you.
Next Tuesday.
Thank you.
Everyone good? Yeah. All right. Before we start, I want to hear kind of a summary of what you got. We read through this, and this is really interesting, and I just want to say one thing to the board. We're going to have to discuss at the end of this some stuff that we haven't regularly tackled. And this is, you know, normally an A&R would be this process, but this is just a little bit more complex as they go through a little bit more of a process for this division. What is it, direct division, and it required a bunch of waivers, and I actually was reading through, because Jeff, thank you for providing the subdivision regulation, and was tripping off in my head, wow, it doesn't fit, but then I saw that the applicant put together quite an extensive list of every place where you're seeking a waiver for the places it doesn't fit. And what I didn't see, and we would normally have in our regulations, is a methodology for handling waivers for this specific process. But we do have other processes where we handle waivers that kind of give us sort of an overview of how we might proceed. Generally with waivers, it's a bit of a give and take. While you're asking for something, what are you giving back? And I know you're talking about ceding a bit of the property, 3,000 square feet, as an easement. There's some discussion here about cost to the city, value to the city, that we're going to have, I think, throughout this process, and it's really interesting. So keep that in mind and tell us what you got.
Okay. My name is Mark Annis, A-N-N-I-S, Heritage Surveys Incorporated. And the project consists of subdividing an existing lot to create new lots. Due to the private designation of a portion of Division Street, the project is being filed under the definitive subdivision control regulations to, instead of the approval not required Form A, which you just stated. The paved portion of Division Street ends at an existing driveway leading into a shop that Tom is using as his business, which is a building business. And there is no turnaround per se at the end of the existing Division Street. The town plows, the emergency vehicles use Tom's driveway or the abutter across the street, their driveway, to do a three-point turn. When the snow plow comes down, he leaves the snow in Tom's driveway and Tom takes care of it from there. So what we're proposing is a paved turnaround, a 120 by 25 foot strip that will be deeded to the town, and a stormwater management system which doesn't exist at the end of the street. And this side, I can give a bit of a history. Whoops. So this is an overall picture of where it's located. The end of Overlook Drive and Golden Circle are in the area. This is what we're proposing. Tom's existing house is here. The shop is back here. Division Street. Easy. Division Street. The pavement for Division Street ends approximately in this area where Tom's driveway to the shop begins.
Okay.
There's a little blow-up detail, which is sheet 2. Now I'm going to go back in history. In 1941, Division Street was 1 rod wide, 16.5 feet wide, and the pavement was probably equally as wide. And it was discontinued by the town at a point right here, which number 67 Division Street is here. And the townway was discontinued to here. That was 1941. And then in 1998, Ted Towns came through and sold a 10-foot strip and also extended the public way so as to give parcel number 67 frontage. And the town a 26.5-foot wide right-of-way and wider pavement and more convenient turning and all of that. Division Street from this point, which is midway past parcel number 67, to the end is a private way, 16.5 feet wide. So I've drawn this plan up and color-coded it a little bit so that I think it might be a little more clear than what's the plans that we have submitted.
Does get a little dense in there.
It does get a little bit. So here's number 67. Here's the shop. This blue box is the parcel that will go to the town. There'll be a catch basin installed at this point with a leach cell off at the end. The new pavement will include a 30 by 30 turnaround, and this existing driveway, which is a cyan color, will remain in its location, but new pavement for a turnaround so DPW trucks, emergency vehicles can come down to the end of the street, conveniently turn around and drive back out to Strong.
Am I correct that that effectively gives the new parcel, or lot 2, as it were, 120 feet of frontage?
That's correct.
Which is sort of the overall purpose.
And that's the purpose.
Okay, please continue.
So, Division Street from this line, which was created in 1998 from the Ted Town Survey, is private, so ownership of the abutters goes to the center. So we've offset the 25 by 120 rectangle that will be deeded to the town. We've offset it so that
Yeah, I see that.
you get free, cleared feet.
Okay. Okay. All right. So let's talk about the requested waivers, the things that don't tick off the boxes. And I'm going to have to take a moment to pull this up in order to pull that out of the documents. Normally, this is complicated because of the 3,000 square feet and what the ramifications of that are. I know that there's water hookup, sewer hookup that's involved in that, as you showed, and what the ramifications to the city are. But there's somewhere in here, you did a wonderful job of highlighting, and I'm gonna see if I can find it. Soil, this may take me a few moments. Maybe not there. Somewhere.
I think it is in that bound packet somewhere,
Bound
yep.
packet, and I
Yep.
just didn't. So many documents. Past all the abutters. Just out of curiosity, do we have any abutters with us here tonight?
Yes.
3 of you, is that correct? All right, well, I'll give you a chance to speak in a little bit after we do a little bit of deliberation, okay? I see you've got a drainage summary here. I'm gonna skip through that. We're trying to get to this. Project description, support system, natural conditions, design, bingo. Okay, thank you, Jeff.
You found it.
Section 7, plans A through C, waiver request due to limited scope of project. So these are the things that we don't quite hit. The first is a waiver of the subdivision regulations, section 6047, restrictive covenants. No covenant is required for the parcel A, will be convened to the city, and an easement is proposed for the turnaround. So I should also, if I can find it, pull out this subdivision booklet here, which is where that comes from. And if we go to 604A, which looks to be...
Page 20.
Oh, you're the best. Thank you. takes a team. 20. That's, oh yeah, there we go, restrictive covenants. The applicant shall submit whenever applicable as part of his or their application, any and all documents such as but not limited to master deeds, restrictive covenants, deed restrictions, homeowner association rules, and regulations of any commonly owned shared land, detention pond, open space, recreation area, etc. Said document shall be submitted by the board to the Department of Public Works and the Town Council, and the response shall be given in writing within 30 days of the date of submittal. And so that's the covenant that they want, restrictive covenants. And your claim is that you're giving an easement covenant as a result. I don't believe I've ever received a covenant before, Jeff. Have you been involved in receiving a covenant?
Not in Easthampton. So this is a good question to pin on the table and keep moving because there's a lot of them.
Sure are.
I think that's one of the questions is whether the city requires the covenant. The covenant is the protection that the land will be transferred. So
I did see some documents here to that effect. I mean, the quitclaim covenant seems surely to be relevant, and this would be the first of these I've received. And you know, just off the top of my head, I have to say that seems fitting. I thought it odd that you were claiming you didn't need it, and then we were getting the quitclaim as part of the process, which I think is part of a normal easement process, right?
correct.
So we'll just hold on that.
I think we should hold on that because I think it'll start to take shape once we get through the list.
All right, I'll keep going. Number 2, the waiver of subdivision regulations, section 701 SA-D, cul-de-sac or dead-end street. Division Street you're saying Division Street's an existing roadway that ends at an existing driveway. The roadway will be approximately 1,090 feet in length with the added turnaround. The proposed hammerhead turnaround will improve existing traffic flow. And the requirement at 701, and anyone that wants to go ahead to help pinpoint pages for me is my hero.
I'll get back on it.
701. And this is section 6AD. Okay, here we go. 6A through D. Cul-de-sac or dead-end street. A is a permanent cul-de-sac or dead-end street. Shall be no longer than 500 feet. Let me just see if I can get the one. Permanent cul-de-sac, no. Permanent cul-de-sac turnaround, no. Island. A temporary cul-de-sac should be allowed only where, in the opinion of the planning board, it is essential with a reasonable development of the subdivision, and where it is a part of the street or way that will eventually be extended into adjoining property. The design of a temporary turnaround shall be satisfactory to the planning board and clearly shown on the plan as temporary in nature, and such property lines shall be those which would normally have been required or used without the turnaround. Not sure that this counts as temporary.
Yeah, it's not
I believe
temporary.
this is permanent.
That is the intent, right? It's a permanent turnaround?
So,
It's not a
It'll be a
temporary
permanent hammerhead turnaround.
Yeah.
Right, so we've got A through C would be a permanent cul-de-sac or dead-end street shall be no longer than 500 feet in length, measured along the center line of construction from its beginning to the center of the island at the turnaround. Cul-de-sacs or dead-end streets shall be allowed only on local streets in type 1 subdivisions. I did look, you are a type 1 subdivision because of your 40,000 square foot, you're in excess of 40,000 definition. Okay. Permanent cul-de-sac street shall be provided with a turnaround at the end of the street having a minimum outside roadway radius of 60 feet and a property line radius of at least 80 feet. The center of the cul-de-sac shall be on the center line of construction. And lastly, a permanent cul-de-sac turnaround island shall be constructed in lieu of paving the entire area of the cul-de-sac. The roadway pavement shall have the same width as the roadway leading into the cul-de-sac. Said pavement width beginning at the exterior radius of the turnaround, with the inner circle graded, seeded, and or appropriately planted with acceptable trees or shrubs, or left with natural tree growth. The maintenance of said inner circle shall be the responsibility of the developer, his successor, and assigns, or a homeowners association. I don't think that's relevant in this case. So definitely in need of a waiver there. Personally, I don't think that's a particularly big deal. I think the seeding of the land is good enough.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's already so long anyway. It's already outside of that restriction, or outside of that. So all they're doing is providing a turnaround, which is actually
A benefit.
a benefit. Yeah, and it's why pave a giant cul-de-sac, which is just actually worse for the environment, more for them to pave. It's a lot more low impact to have that turnaround.
And it's really only for the single property with the exception of emergency vehicles,
And snow.
etc.
Yep.
Can't recall here if I at the
We'll go
last
down.
minute got a note. I think this might, I want to keep reading through these, but there was a last minute note, wasn't there? Was it from the fire department? I can't remember what. I'll have to go through. Planning board, okay. Fire department, the assistant chief met with the applicant and has verbally stated the proposed road extension and accompanying vehicle turnaround will be I think he said will be satisfy the needs of emergency vehicle access. And a letter's expected. I think we received somewhere in my mess here. I've
Yep.
got that. Okay. We'll look at that later. So that just sort of confirms, I think, that that one's okay.
Right, the fire department also noted that they have no issue with the additional length and reduced width at the end of, and so that's
And I'll
what we're saying.
go through the rest of those, but here's number 3. Waiver of subdivision regulations 7.018-9, right-of-way. The right-of-way shall be in accordance with the standards as shown in Appendix F. And you're saying Division Street's an existing roadway that ends at an existing driveway. The roadway will be approximately 1,090 feet in length. With the added turnaround, the proposed hammerhead turnaround will improve existing traffic flow. And the claim in Appendix F, there's Form J, Form I, H, Form F, no, those are forms. Anyone that sees it.
Oh, I'm not looking. I was over on,
Yeah, Appendix F says, the maximum development traffic volume potential. So it's based on the type. So proposed street with MDTVP of not greater than 280 T. Some great things here. Yeah, can you translate any of that, Jeff? Page 80.
maximum
Additional
vehicle
daily,
trips.
daily trips, I believe.
Yep, because that's what this was about.
ADT and MDTVP.
Maximum daily.
Trips. I don't know what the date would be.
It's the top
Volume
maximum.
potential. Okay, it's right there, maximum development
Yeah.
traffic volume.
Okay.
Okay, so 200, 500, 2,000, and 2,000. We don't have a traffic study, do we? No.
But it doesn't increase. What is the purpose? Is there going to be an additional home here at some point? What's the purpose of this subdivision? or this-
The intent is at some point converting the shop to a residence.
Okay. So there's a potential for additional trips for one additional residence.
I
Correct.
don't think it's gonna amount to much.
No.
So,
We don't require that for any other new one lots.
but really what this is saying, it's about the width of the local street. And that's what it's about how wide it should
The
be.
existing right-of-way
16 and a half?
is 26 and a half,
Okay.
going down to 16 and a half.
Okay.
And we are proposing 25.
And there, at 200 of the daily trips, it's 24, and at 500, it's 26. And I'd have to think it's somewhere in the middle of those two.
Oh, yeah.
But I think, so the width of the right-of-way
The
is
right-of-way.
25, but the road, this says that the road width of a new road would be 24 feet from curb to curb. So I think we just need to make sure we're talking apples and apples and
Okay,
oranges and oranges. So
I'm reading 70189 right-of-way. The right-of-way shall be in accordance with the standards.
right, and
The
then
right-of-way.
In Appendix F, that's correct. The right-of-way shall be in accordance with the standards as shown in Appendix F.
right, but then Appendix F says width of roadway on local streets. So can I just take a stab at
Go,
just
please.
just taking one step back? I know that there are abutters or neighbors who have questions and concerns. So I want to acknowledge that, but I think to take one step is that we have subdivision regulations that were created in 1990. They are old. Many towns have updated them. We're in the process of that. And what we have is a unique situation on Division Street. So it is a square peg. It's a round hole in a square peg, hence the waiver. So I think we just need to be cognizant that this layout of Division Street will never achieve a subdivision road standard.
Right.
Concur.
And so the issue at hand is really the change at the end, that to make it an improvement would still require some waivers. And so I just want to take this moment just to go through, so the standard by which the board uses for waivers in this case is articulated under 3.04. So strict compliance with the requirements of the rules and regulations may be waived when, in the judgment of the planning board, the action is in the public interest and not inconsistent with the intent of the subdivision control law. So
That's
we are,
variation?
yep, that's the variation, yep. So we're gonna go through some painstaking conversations. I think the public comment will be useful, but you know, there are standards that will really just never be met. So the board is trying to decide how close can they come with the proposal to accommodate the creation of one new building lot at the end. So I think just putting it in perspective is that, you know, these regulations are set up for creating a brand new subdivision of 100 houses with, you know, a mile of road with a cul-de-sac and, you know, 100 building lots.
Sure.
So it is difficult to fit this unique case into here,
Right.
hence the waiver. So
Okay.
I just kind of in perspective.
Some of these just aren't gonna fit.
Right, so
Well,
the
I
24
agree, but I
foot-
still wanna walk
Yep,
through
no, I
them
think
to
that's important.
try and wrap my head around which ones fit really poorly and which ones fit better, and then open it to everyone to get your, you know, their opinions so that we can deliberate at the end.
Okay.
So we're on the right of way, number 3, which I think we decided wasn't that bad, except for the width, I'm not quite sure, but it seemed to be within close enough. Let's move forward to number 4. Waiver of subdivision regulations, section 703, open space, which is an interesting one. And 703.
Page 37.
You are awesome. 37, open space. Before approval of a plan, the board may also in proper cases require the plan to show a park or parks suitably located for playground or recreational purposes or for providing light and air. The park shall not be unreasonable in area or in relation to the land being subdivided and to the prospective uses of the land. The board may be appropriate endorsement of the plan, weird language, on the plan require that no building be erected upon such parks for a period of not more than 3 years without its approval. The board shall not require dedication of such recreation areas without just compensation to the owner, where the subdivision constitutes an approved open space residential development under the zoning bylaw of the town. The disposition of the open space under such approval shall be designated as part of the subdivision plan.
Yeah.
This is a no-brainer.
It's no brainer. There's no need for this.
Yeah, I mean, that's not one
For
we're
this
gonna fight
particular
about.
application, it doesn't need open space.
Okay. Number 5, waiver of feel free to jump in, Harry or Jim, at any point if you think we're tackling something you don't agree with. Waiver of subdivision regulations, section 707 and 808 sidewalks. Sidewalks shall be required on both sides of all streets in type 2 subdivision and type 1 subdivision collector streets. Sidewalks shall be required on one side of all streets in type 1 subdivision locations. And that's what I saw too, looking at that as type 1. That entire street should have sidewalks on it, but it doesn't. I don't know why it doesn't. It's just how
It's
things-
only 26 and a half feet wide
Yeah.
for the right-of-way. There's no room,
Yeah.
there's no room for the sidewalks.
No room. So that explains
So
why
would
it
you do the
doesn't.
Sidewalk at the very end.
So for me, requiring that you put a little piece of sidewalk at the very end where there's no sidewalk all the way up
Yeah,
the rest of the
it's
street
pointless.
is folly.
Yep.
Anyone disagree with that? Okay. Waiver of subdivision regulations, section 8.06, 1-7, curbing, which is in relation to the same thing, is that you've got to put curbing in for all of this. You say Division Street is an existing roadway and does not have any curbing. No addition of curbing is proposed for this project, which would make it similar to every other
Yep.
thing on that road. Any disagreement there? Okay. Lastly, or not lastly, I think it was an 8, next to lastly. Waiver of subdivision regulations, section 8.12, light standards. Poles and light fixtures for street lights shall be required by the board. Spacing shall be determined by the Department of Public Works. And you say Division Street is an existing roadway with existing lighting, and you request that the installation of street lights be waived. That one's a little bit interesting.
Yeah, where's the nearest street light?
2 houses up?
64 Division Street, probably.
Okay.
There's only
So-
one
so-
street light.
So would you be willing to sort of roughly show us on that map where you believe the nearest street light is?
Approximately here.
Okay, roughly, and I understand that's rough, okay. And you feel that you just don't need any light down there? Why is that? I mean, the security isn't an issue? No?
What's the distance roughly between that and what the end of the road would be?
2 houses away from that light.
100 feet, 200 feet?
220 feet, roughly.
That seems like it would need to.
Was there a question of whether there are other streetlights other than that one though on the street?
Only one.
Only one, right?
Only one
On the entire street?
on the whole street. It's a
Including the
narrow
other
street.
side of Strong?
Correct, it's a narrow street.
All right. So, I'm being a little bit loosey-goosey now. I appreciate the information, but in general, I promise I'll call you up later to actually speak, okay? So, we'll just keep that in mind right now.
Yeah.
There's only one street. I don't think it fits, but nothing else here fits, so we're doing the best we can with it. Just keep that in mind, okay? Let's go on to the last one. Waiver of subdivision regulations, section 8.15, street trees and landscaping plan. No plantings, landscaping is proposed for this project due to the limited scope of the project. I just want to ask where that turnaround is. There's no trees before it that would block the view of the turnaround or anything like that. It's really about visibility of driving I'm asking about.
Well, there's some shrubs there now that will be removed.
Okay,
that
can you
that I
just-
had planted.
Oh, you'll pull them out as
Yeah,
part of this
yeah,
project?
it needs
Okay.
to be, yeah.
Okay. All right, any questions about that one? That seems particularly relevant. There are no other trees or anything else you're pulling out as part of this? No?
A couple of small saplings on the edge, but nothing, no.
Okay. No questions on that? So, the light was a bit of a question. The covenant was a bit of a question. At this point, I think it's probably good to get some input from the public.
I agree.
If anyone wants to speak to this issue, you, sir, come on up. Please state your name and address, right at the podium.
My name's Al.
At the podium.
At the podium, yeah. So we
And they
can
didn't
get-
leave you a lot of room there, so be careful.
Yeah,
coming through.
careful when you walk through.
Mark, would you just close that laptop too? You can just close that laptop that's up there.
My name's Al Corsack. I live at 65 Division Street,
Can you spell your last name?
K-O-R-S-A-K.
Welcome.
Yep. Right now, if you're talking about the street and the lighting, right now, if you were to drive down Division Street, only one car would be able to get by at a time. The car is, the snow banks, it's always plowed, at the end of the street. And, what I don't understand is, I moved there in '98, after the town built it. I was the first one in there. And it wasn't considered a building lot. And, at all. On my deed, it says not considered a building lot. And then, now, they're saying with waivers, this can turn into a building lot with a permanent house. The shop itself, I believe, is sitting on a slab that would need a foundation and landscaping. It does have water, sitting water after a storm. And I have a drain in my yard that drains into where I think the hammerhead's supposed to go, in that area. It goes underneath his driveway.
Would you be willing to touch on that map, which property is yours? Maybe keep the one, okay, that's fine.
Right there.
You're right next to him?
The drain is here.
Right, and which property is yours? You're to the
Right here,
left side, right
65.
there? Okay.
This here.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, please continue.
I don't understand how you can, make it into a building lot. You really, it should be, it wasn't considered a building lot, doesn't have the square footage. And I don't understand how you can, change it.
Okay.
Doesn't,
All right, thank you very much.
all
I'll
right.
comment that the system for change is to follow what they've done, apply for waivers, come before us, and we either grant it or we don't. Anyone else?
Yes?
Come on up. Again, it says state your name and address, but you probably heard that.
Yes, I did. My name is Eleanor Corsack. I live at 65 Division Street. And my husband, like he spoke. Okay, my concern is, I know you're talking about doing the roundabout for the vehicles to come on the street and stuff. But like my husband said, it's a very narrow street. Only one car at a time. If somebody comes up, the other one's got to back down, or they got to pull in somebody's driveway, back on the lawn, or go on the front lawn. Only one vehicle at a time, either up or down. Now, we've had a couple medical emergencies on the street, and I have seen where the fire trucks and the ambulance have parked on Strong Street, and they have come up with the gurney to go to houses. And once the street is blocked, there's only one way on that street, one way off that street. It doesn't go into anything else. It's a very narrow street. The town, like you say, eventually you want to put a roundabout where it would, you know, the vehicles can turn around. Let's be honest, nobody, when they come up the street, the way the street is, as soon as they come up, they know it's a street that doesn't connect into Overlook Drive or Golden Drive. And as soon as you start coming up, right away people say, well, I can't get here, I can't get there. They'll back down into somebody else's driveway. They'll always back into another driveway before they get to the end of the street, because it's so narrow, and the road that goes to your shop, they don't know where it's gonna go. I mean, and if you're gonna do the turnabout with this.
You don't think adding something to the end would actually help that?
Well, you'll have to drive all the way to the end of the street.
Yeah.
Okay, why not? It's still, the street's gonna be narrow. Why don't widen the street so 2 vehicles at a time can go by?
Yeah, that's a city problem though, that's not the
Yeah.
applicant's
Would be
issue.
on the applicant.
That's
Yeah,
not
I
the
mean, but
applicant's
it's,
issue.
I mean, it's still, the
Well, I
turnabout
understand.
still isn't gonna do
Yeah,
anything.
It sounds terrible, but
It
that's really
isn't,
not
but that's just
anything-
the way the street has always been.
You're right.
And like I said, it should have been, when it was divided in 1998, why wasn't it considered, I know times have changed, believe me, I'm a lifelong resident of Easthampton, I know
Right.
things change. But, why all of a sudden now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Is that street marked as a dead end?
Either at the end of the street, it says it's not a
Not a
throughway.
throughway?
Okay.
Yeah, and mostly, you know,
So conceivably, actually, if this, they're talking about turning the shed into a residence, potentially, whether
Mm-hmm.
or not that happens, but that actually would reduce traffic on that road, because
the
there
only
wouldn't
people
be-
that go down Division Street really are people that live on Division
Residents.
Street. Residents, really, because most people look for a connection to try to get onto Golden Drive, Sterling
Sure.
Drive, cut over to Willow Drive, or,
Right.
you know.
But this project wouldn't impact any of that,
No.
right?
Well, I mean, it's only, you're gonna put, you got 13 houses now in Division Street, so you're just squeezing
Yeah,
something
okay.
like a jigsaw puzzle to stick another little piece in, that's all it's gonna do.
Okay.
It really isn't gonna do, you know.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you very
welcome.
much. Anyone else? Am I seeing a maybe? Yeah, okay, come on.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to know kind of what the plan was considering my property. My name's Chris Cabrini, and I'm at 28 Golden Drive, so I'm abutting the other side.
Chris, would you spell your last name real quick?
Cabrini, C-A-B-R-I-N-I.
And we're roughly on that map?
We're on
I didn't,
28 Golden Drive, so we're on the other side.
He's on the fold.
on the fold up above. Okay, got it.
Oh,
Yeah, okay,
Yeah, I'm right here.
all right.
okay.
So, when we initially moved in, one of the things was, I mean, this property
Can you
was
go back
pretty
to the
much
mic,
all
sorry?
wooded when we got in there, and you couldn't see the garage that's there now. And they cleared it all out, obviously, so that they could do this, and now I can see the garage, the shop out in the backyard, but I came here basically because I wanted to know what the plan was with the property. Now that we're splitting it into 2, my assumption was that it was gonna be sold at some point. So, but it's now a house that's directly in my backyard, affecting, you know, I have no privacy in my backyard now because the house is really right there. I can see it now that all the trees are gone. You could barely see it before, but now you can see the whole thing. So more than anything else, it's affecting our property value if it eventually goes to a residential lot. But,
Well, what is it, so, from what I'm reading, from what has been supplied, it actually is what is the current use?
The building, most of it's my personal hobby kind of stuff.
Okay,
And
so
I
it
do
is
park
not-
my construction van in there for my business, and I keep tools in there as well. But I do not conduct business in the building. I don't do shop work or build walls there.
So
I
it's
don't-
not New England Remodeling General Contractors?
It is.
It is?
Yeah, that's my guess.
Okay, and so you
You're
don't
not
have,
you're saying you're not bringing clients there?
No clients, no, I'm not doing shop work. I'm not conducting business out of the building. My business is in there, but just my personal storage.
and is it just you or other employees
Just
that
me.
go to the building?
It's just me.
Just you? Okay.
that's I mean, it's been quiet since we've been there, but it's, again, there's no one that lives there. So it's just been the building, but now I can see it. It's gonna be different when it becomes
Yeah.
a
When we come
residential
to choose,
property.
so it could be-
Would you
it's
come
my
up,
property.
Check out.
Yeah.
The trees in the back
Yeah.
could be cut down because a lot of them are starting to fall and they're
Yeah.
rotting.
Just want to make sure it gets
So we got-
recorded into
Yeah,
the
I have some of
microphone.
that.
So it wouldn't fall in my building.
Yeah.
I want to be clear,
Into the microphone, please.
I'd like to be clear too, 'cause, you had said that we were going to convert the building into a residence. That's not the case. We're adding a house next to it. on the
Oh,
property.
so the existing
Yes.
shed's gonna stay, and you're adding a house
Yes, with
to
the
it?
building, yes. So
Okay.
it's a garage, we're adding a house to it, a small, single-family.
You're adding on to that structure, basically.
Well,
It's gonna be the same
what's-
footprint, like, or
Some
you're
over
adding
here.
to that footprint?
Right to it. We're putting the house right here,
You're gonna put it in front?
yes.
Okay.
To be honest, you know.
No, that's
here
what
to
we're
hide
looking for.
anything. You
No,
know,
yeah,
it's
that's,
good to
and
know.
that's really
It's
good to know.
And the trees were not in the back, they were not taken down too. I'm sending neighbors, they were taken down out of safety. I had some branches falling on my roof already. and we-
Which, I mean, trees can be grown again, it's just,
Right.
it'll take time before it gets to that point.
Okay.
That's pretty much all.
Okay, thank you
Okay.
very much.
So thank you.
So I have a point of quick clarification. So currently it's one property
Yes.
and there's a residence at 67 and then there's a shop. So that's perfectly allowed under zoning.
Yes.
You have a residence and you have an accessory structure with some use, that's perfect. When you create a new lot, the shop cannot stand alone
As commercial.
as, well, it needs to become a dwelling use in order to qualify as a building lot. So I think the proposal is a little bit clearer now that the garage structure would stay with a residence being added. So the property becomes residential in nature and it still has that accessory building.
Sure.
It's
So I
not a
think,
commercial lot.
right.
No, I just
Right.
thought it was gonna be transferred in, I thought it would become an actual single-family home, but it's
Right.
not. It's going to be
And
an
that also
accessory
too-
structure to a new
The
single-family home.
building
Right.
does have a foundation. already.
Understand.
Right.
It was
The building has a
sustainable.
foundation?
Yes.
Okay.
We added half the building to it afterwards. Half this was here and we bought the property. We added to it. There's a full foundation. It's a
Okay.
modern building.
Oh, so it's not a slab?
No, not
Okay.
slab, full
So a lot of
foundation.
missing links coming
Yeah.
together here. Thank
Exactly.
you.
This was
Yes.
built by Ted. Ted
It's
now
like-
lived here.
Yeah.
It's like a
I bought the
puzzle.
house owner after Ted. This was Ted's workshop, just like it is for myself.
Okay.
Okay.
Like I said, we added to it, and there's a full foundation. It has its own electrical service, its own cable hookup, just water run to it, just not hooked up yet. It's just, you know, at the street, it's not hooked up, it's brought to my property.
Okay.
Okay.
So, is there anyone else that wants to speak to this? Come on up. I'm sure you know the drill.
My name's George Zlotowski. I live at 19 Golden Drive in
Do you need him to
Easthampton.
spell that?
Please.
What's your last
Z
name?
like in zebra, O-L-T-O-W-S-K-I, Zlotowski.
Thank you.
I'm presenting on behalf of my neighbor, Dr. Patricia Packard. She's of 22 Golden Drive. She's on vacation in Florida, so she couldn't be here. She's on the other side of Division. Just to let you know about that.
We actually have a letter received from her.
We have a letter.
Right, you do have that.
I'll be reading that.
Well, you will be reading that.
Unless you want to, you know, please.
Sure, I streamlined it a bit because I think it got a bit wordy, but okay.
It's fair.
Remember, you're being recorded.
Yeah, she'll watch this later.
Go
No,
ahead.
I just, not major changes, let's put it that way, but, I recently received a postcard about the subdivision of the above property. My husband and I are presently in Florida and will not be able to attend the meeting. I have owned the property at 22 Golden Drive since 1986. I have noticed loud noises coming from the 67 Division Street location from commercial trucks that are delivering to the property, especially the piercing backing up noises of heavy equipment and trucks. She goes into some research that she done. In fact, that I did an internet search and was surprised to find out that 67 Division Street is the sole location of New England general contractors. She goes into a bit of history on that. And there are 2 licenses issued by state of Massachusetts by the Office of Consumer Affairs and also by the Office of Public Safety. The company specializes in new homes and remodels, and their products include doors, windows, roofing, siding, kitchens, and baths. This business activity explains the daily noise levels. And now her questions. Will the business address remain at 67 Division Street. And it's,
I'm going to just pause you for a moment.
Sure.
As you read this list of questions out,
yeah.
I would appreciate it. Have you seen this letter?
No.
Okay, so
Yeah, it was an email directed to Mr. Bagg.
So when
recently.
he's done, I'll hand this list to you so you can look at these questions and come to the mic and just address these one at a time. Please continue with the
Sure.
question. Oh, thank you.
Will the business address remain at 67 Division Street or be moved, will the activity be moved to another lot? Will the business now be at 2 locations? Will the road extension increase the amount of commercial traffic and noise to the surrounding residential area in addition to what we have now? What address will take the commercial deliveries? Will dividing the property give rise to a request for construction of more outbuildings on both lots, therefore an expansion of the commercial nature of New England remodeling general contractors? And I guess the only thing I would have to add to that, I mean, certainly I'm not as close to 67 Division as she is, but to the extent that, we do pay ever increasing real estate taxes for the purpose of being in a quiet, peaceful residential area. If in fact this will increase noise pertaining to increased commercial traffic and as business improves, then there are issues associated with that. So kind of a combination of my comment and also Dr. Packard's email.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Did you want to rebut?
Sure. As far as taking deliveries, I'm a new house builder. I don't have my lumber delivered to my shop and then put it in the back of my pickup truck and bring it to the house. So as far as...
You said you don't do that? Is that
No,
right? Yeah.
no, we don't. We don't take any deliveries there. The only deliveries I've ever received at my property are for projects I was doing at my own house or on the building itself.
So you're saying it may have happened as a one-off?
Yeah, I mean, we all work on our houses, you need to get
Yeah.
lumber there, but I do not and have not and will not ever accept commercial work there. We don't do that there, I've said it.
Okay.
I can welcome you into my shop and you can check it out. I have storage for my truck, I have storage for my equipment, I have ladders, staging, my general contractor, which means I don't do most of the work. We hire out the plumbers, the electricians, some of the trim work, the roofing, and we do some of that, but we don't have it at our residence and then bring it to the building.
Okay.
Okay. For the record, though, if you do build a house there, a new house there, there
will
will
be
be
some
a
material coming,
temporary
yes.
noise increase during the construction of the house.
Yeah.
Okay.
During normal business hours,
Yeah.
I will not be working through the night
course.
or on Sunday afternoons, typical business hours like we always do.
Okay.
And respect for neighbors that way.
Great.
What were the other questions here? Oh, extra outbuildings, no. We can't cover too much of the land anyway, so we wouldn't want to add increased buildings. There's no reason to. We're not going to expand our business there. We have no intentions of it. Eventually, my business will no longer be there. It'll be at a different address, but until the day I move, it'll still be there. I'm required by our law in our town to have a home-based business. That's why my business address is 67 Division. We have a home office and a garage for my van.
Okay.
The other things about commercial traffic and noise coming in, I believe you've answered with that. Outbuildings you've covered, deliveries. I think that some of these are a little redundant in the questions. They overlap the same concepts. So I think that answers it. Are you looking for another chance at the podium? Do you have more questions?
Can I ask a question?
Well, only if you come up. You got. I'm going to let him. Are you all set with your rebuttal? All right, come on up. I'll give you one more, but I don't want to do too many duplications. We do have another item on the agenda. So.
So my other question, I guess, was if you do go to sell the property, I mean, you're splitting this into 2 divisions. Was the plan initially for you guys to stay in your property and sell the other property, and then that? So, in other words,
I stand up to speak, so.
Yes.
Yes, the official. The intent is to build a house there for my son.
Okay.
So we keep our shop, keep doing what we're doing.
Okay.
I can't say that someday I won't move. It's possible.
Okay, but the plan right now is that you guys are.
Yeah, I want to build a house there, single family house.
Okay.
I'm not trying to subdivide this, and it's just, I'm sure a lot of people are thinking this. I'm not trying to subdivide this, leave this a commercial building here for commercial use while I live here for something else.
Yeah, okay.
As that's not the intention here. I'm not trying to create a business in a residential neighborhood. As a matter of fact, that's why I added on to my shop to begin with, to make sure my van and my ladders stayed inside the building, because I don't have to do that. I did that to be respectful to the neighbors. I have a building that looks like a house purposely for that reason.
More of my question was, if you're staying and you're gonna sell the property next to you, you have more invested in it. Not money-wise,
Yeah.
but you're still being local, and so it's more important to you what's gonna go next to you too as well.
I'm-
That's why I'm
yeah,
asking.
And I'll be the one building the house next to it. That's what I do for a living naturally, so.
Yeah. And you
Okay.
did say it's going in front of the garage?
Thank you both
Yeah,
very
kind of
much.
like it.
So I'm going to move on here. I'm going to read some other comments that I have. The next one's from the Concom, but I just want to make one suggestion as we go through this, depending, of course, on our decision at the end. It may be a good idea to, when you actually build and do the construction, to maybe put up a little fencing or some trees in the back to, during the construction, to account for the fact that there are neighbors and there's going to be noises from construction.
There is a good wooded area there now.
Temporary, I'm talking about.
So right here, this is all trees,
Yeah.
being the road, all the way across and back to somewhere around here.
Okay.
It's all wooded.
It's that top area that I believe that neighbor was speaking of.
Oh,
where-
back
where
here,
he
yeah,
lost
this,
his trees.
there's actually a fence, a wood fence, stockade
Okay.
fence.
Could I make a comment?
Do you want to get up and speak? Have you? I don't think you've spoken
he
yet.
has not yet.
Come on up. I'm going to let him come up.
Is there anyone else after this gentleman? Go ahead.
I just want, will there be a formal response to Mrs. Packard's email?
This is the response to that email. This process here. Please
And
go
the
up to
meeting
the podium.
minutes are-
State your
they're
name and
recorded.
address.
Okay, my name is Walt Drabanowitz, 53 Overlook Drive. Okay, actually, the engineer or Tom could answer my questions. Okay, this area of Z, what does that mean? That's what I was trying to figure out.
That is a drafting line that incorporates the lot that was created on Overlook Drive
Okay,
to the center line of Division Street, the private way. So it combines the two parcels of land.
okay,
It's a
so,
drafting line.
so this 8-foot section is what, basically the old county road?
Yes. The Old Town Road.
Old Town Road, not County Division.
Okay.
Old Town Road.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, you're gonna be,
Can you just,
We-
Walt, could you talk in the mic, because
we
it's
can't
gonna be
hear
hard
you.
to hear when you're,
Yeah.
yep,
oh,
okay,
okay.
sorry.
Okay.
I know it's hard to look.
My next question is, you're gonna be paving from the end of Division Street, right? So, where you're gonna have this hammerhead.
Yep.
So you're gonna have paving to this area here, right? And this looks like a storm drain basin?
Yes, we have to have.
Okay, now, you have it shooting off at the angle here, which I assume is probably another 65 feet,
Not sure, but yeah.
You mean the driveway? Is that what you're referring
or
to?
the easement,
The easement. Okay. yeah.
the partial. Okay, now, will you be cutting down any timber wood or anything?
There may be a tree or two when we build the house, just because there's one tree kind of in the middle of the backyard. But we're not clearing any of the rest of the land now.
Okay, so in other words, this basin here is pretty much gonna be on the open area that exists now? Where the field is?
No,
You
you're.
got the woods?
No, that's on the road.
Oh, this is all gonna be in the road?
In the
area?
road, yes. It's a storm drain,
Okay, so,
which goes to, I heard what they called it.
The leaching
collection-
basin.
Leaching basin, yes. So
there's
that
40
stops any stormwater from going anywhere else.
Catch basin is here at the end of the pavement. There's 45 feet of pipe for
Call it a dry well, if you will.
yeah, where your driveway is now?
Yeah.
roughly right on the
The
edge of the
turn.
driveway.
Right there.
Oh, so it's gonna be right around the turn?
Yeah.
So it's basically open there, then you have the retainer wall or whatever.
Yeah.
And basically, the wooded lot area will
Yeah,
remain.
it's down this way more, yeah.
Okay.
That will all remain.
Are you good?
That will remain.
Okay,
Yeah, it's not my objective here to open up things for people. I would have even cut the trees behind my shop down, like I was, but they were just rotting and falling down. It was a safety thing. It was just our one, just
Yeah,
other
what-
than that, the vines, and so with all the trees that are along here, I like trees. I have a lot of
Okay.
trees between the property here I'm leaving. I
Oh.
like privacy.
Yeah.
I'm not cutting any of it down.
oh, so where you have your boundary of trees.
Yep, that's all staying.
Oh, that's all staying
Yep.
too? Okay.
I like trees. I don't want to come down if I don't have to.
I don't blame
You
you.
know,
I like trees too.
Well, I guess
That
there
was
is,
my
I
question.
think I have one tree here at one time that's kind of nasty, but no, I'm not clearing it.
For you. All right, we have a statement I want you to make. Go ahead.
So, thank you.
Can I just ask, do you own the property to the south with the Z that you're mentioning? Is that your property that, is
Yeah,
that,
my
sorry?
property is, yeah, right.
53 Overlook.
Right,
Okay, great.
but it's
Where the
the
easement is.
property where it
Yep.
changes, because you came in to speak with me, so
Yeah,
where
yeah.
the Z line is, that's a property that you gain through this process,
Mm-hmm.
right?
So
That's
just
what that line
so
means.
you're aware,
Sorry, I had.
being this a private
I
road,
understand.
discontinued road,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if using the proper term.
Well, this hasn't, well,
It's
it's been
still an easement.
discontinued,
Discontinued.
abandoned,
Uh-huh.
but this is declared a private way.
Right.
So because it's a private way, you own to the center of it,
Right.
Yes, you'll get this footage now officially.
through the
This
derelict
is your,
fee.
you live over here?
No, we're right here.
Right here, right next to the
Mhm.
entrance. So, yeah, so this portion of the land you technically get. Like you've been
Okay.
using,
I-
like you've been using before, like it's.
We need to
that
move.
wooded area.
We need to move forward, sir.
Oh, that should do it.
Okay, perfect, Chris.
So just as a clarification, the way you show that plan, is the actual rectangle going to be fully paved? The
No.
new, the new.
Can you see the red lines?
There's a it's a red
Yeah,
light.
that's,
an
okay,
L.
so in fact, then, the actual catch basin
boot.
is, the seeping catch basin, whatever it's called, is not on paved area.
Well,
It's actually in your
The
grass.
catch basin is.
The catch basin
The
is, right.
receiving end of it is in.
Is in your
soil.
grassed area, yes.
But in your.
No, I
in
wanted
your
to
right-
clarify that for the record.
right
I-
easement, I'm sorry.
Yep,
It's
I'm
in your
familiar with
easement
it.
area.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
So the catch basin itself is in the pavement to catch the stormwater. It goes to the catch basin that leaches out, the drainage manhole, I should say, that leaches out
It's gonna be
into
a
the grassed
leaching
area.
manhole.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so that answers that question.
I'm now going to read the statements from Mallory Larkham, the conservation agent. Her comments are as follows, and she's labeled them 1, 2, and 3. Her first is the location of the work does not appear to be located within a wetland area via GIS mapping, and the applicant has noted that relative to the limits of work, parcel A is over 100 feet from any wetland area. It is, however, noted that it appears that there are low-lying areas and changes in elevation within the area specific on Lot 2. There is also a retaining structure along the shop driveway indicating it supports the driveway as slope drops. The area where the leaching drainage manhole is proposed also appears to be within a lower lying area when compared to the surrounding topography. 2. On page 3 of 5 of the development impact study, the applicant references depth to groundwater by referencing the soil map rather than the actual test pit data. It is recommended that the applicant should be asked to conduct test pits which clarify the actual depth to groundwater, including in the location where the parking area is proposed and the leaching drainage method is proposed. 3, it is recommended that the applicant be asked to clarify why they have chosen deep sump and a leaching drainage manhole as opposed to other infiltration methods such as vegetated infiltration basin, which may be preferable in terms of water quality benefits. The depth of the structure is also unclear based on my general and brief overview. Have you seen that letter or heard of that letter before? So there's some concerns there about test pit data and leaching. Do you have any response to those?
Well,
Do you want to see the letter?
this is not a retaining wall technically. This was actually the start of a house by Ted Town. This was gonna plan on this being a porch. I spoke from the porch house. And the house is gonna come across and tie into the shop as the garage. And then he had difficulties and couldn't get it to be done. Why he put a partial foundation, beyond me, let me know, it doesn't matter. As far as a different method of this, I think Mark Reed had just came up with this.
Yes.
Yeah, that we're not open to doing something different. If there's, like I said before, this whole area has been paved. The stormwater comes down from, basically the peak of the hill, the road is right here in front of this house, so. The only rain I get coming off of this is literally the end of the street now to here. The road pitches, there's no curbing.
Yeah.
It goes its natural way. We don't
Yeah.
have any trouble. But water does come from this small area right now where my driveway is.
Yep.
It goes down, it is lower here, but it doesn't pond up, it doesn't go to neighbor's yard.
Okay.
So
So-
if there's another method, I'm for it. I'd rather not do this.
Right, because you have to maintain it, right? You've got to clean that out.
Oh, that'll be on town property at
Is
that point.
that the city's responsibility to clean that out then, Jeff?
Once it
there's-
gets deeded to the town, yes.
Yes. which is an issue we have to discuss, is
Well-
the impacts of cost to the city in this whole
So
thing.
if there's a different method, I'm up for it.
If I could jump in, so there is an email from the city engineer from 4:48 today.
Okay.
The conservation agent comments did go to the engineer. It didn't go to the applicant directly, so I apologize for that. I think, the primary question of the city engineer is that he does, so it's dated today, so I'd suggest, his comment is, I'd suggest seeing if they can get 3 feet separation, meaning between the bottom of the deep sump and the groundwater. So it's a question about where groundwater is in this location. Through confirmation of seasonal high groundwater and advising the DPW is okay with taking ownership. And then it goes on to say, I have no problem with the road width and believe the turnaround is adequate. So one of the sort of remaining issues is the adequacy of the drainage system as proposed. And I think to take the long view, the primary question will be, is it acceptable to the city engineer? Because ultimately, this process, if approved, would give this 120-foot area with the pavement and the drainage feature and the turnaround, it would be city property.
Right.
So this is a process where it would go to city council for approval and acceptance as the rest of the public way on Division Street. So there is some significance to that.
Were you aware of that there's an additional process after this?
No.
Surprise.
That's okay, I expected it. I'm not gonna lie. I wasn't told that, but it's okay.
Okay. That's actually the first I've heard of it too, so it's news to me.
Well, and it's been something to seek clarification on. So I think understanding that the proposal is that this additional area, the new stretch, would become part of the Division Street public way.
This makes sense because this was part of my debate as I was reading this and going through this last night. Is it really the planning board's decision to decide to pay extra to have the plowing, to pay to have the hookups done, and it's something we haven't encountered to my knowledge.
Plowing almost that same area anyways right now. It's a matter of feet, not a road.
Yeah. I tend to agree in terms of my overall opinion of this, but just about authority, we have to respect what the authority in this process. So it does give us a certain amount of comfort to know that there's another a check and balance to make sure that all everything's being done right. So what part specifically is going to have to go to the city council?
It'll be, generally it'll be the acceptance of that 120-foot by
the easement,
25-foot. Well, there's the parcel shown on the plan. There's a 3,000 square foot parcel which becomes city property. Then the stretch of paved road becomes city maintained.
Okay.
And then the turnaround is also in that same realm, but it's covered by easement. And there is something in the subdivision regs that says if it's out of this right-of-way area, it becomes qualified by an easement. None of this is necessarily out of the ordinary, except it's just not going to be a 24-foot wide road with a cul-de-sac at the end. It's something smaller.
Okay. So I have a few more things I want to read here, some notes from the Board of Health. We already did the fire department, the DPW, stormwater management, Concom I did already. And let's just see here. The health agent has verbally stated the proposal causes no undue impacts to public water supply. The DPW, the city engineer, you just read.
Fire department, I don't think you read, did you?
Fire department, you read, didn't you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you did. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Which I think is everything here. So, what that leaves is the difficult parts. There were some suggestions about the test pits. And there were some suggestions about the city engineer, about the berm that you said was a foundation. Yeah. I think it's good to always to listen to the professionals in the city. But I get the sense that they were throwing out in those, just a tone of those emails, that they were throwing out, make sure you checking with these things. And I think your responses were more than adequate to me. I definitely think there's some concerns listening to the neighbors just about noise, about having the business there, and I hope you'll be cognizant about that. And I think there are concerns, natural and rightfully so, about the traffic and how it impacts people turning. But my sense of this is really what's going to happen is having a turnaround in the end will help. Maybe not. Maybe people won't always go to the end. I think you're likely right about that. But some will, and at least they'll have a place to turn around, which will prevent the driveway. It'll reduce the amount of driveway turnarounds. I think that much is clear. The issues that we had going through the waivers, there were a couple. The covenant, the lights. For me, those are really the only two remaining issues that I have to tackle. Jeff, tell me if there's anything that stands out to you as a giant red flag beyond those two.
Yep, there's only one, and so it goes along with the covenants in a typical subdivision, and I don't know, it doesn't seem like it got captured as a waiver request, but in the subdivision regulations, a standard procedure would be a performance guarantee. So, usually you're talking about a much more substantial project where a developer comes in and proposes roads that are going to provide access to lots, and there's drainage. And yes, it's a substantial undertaking. So in order to do that, the applicant provides a performance guarantee for the full cost of that project. And as it's completed, the costs are returned to the applicant via a process. So that's I believe that's kind of sort of the one remaining question, whether the board believes that this type of project warrants the need to have a bond be posted for the estimated cost.
Are you willing to post a bond?
To ensure that it
I'd
gets
rather
created.
not, it ties up money, but if I have to, then yeah, sure.
So the question I would have, if I may, would be whether the applicant has done any estimation of costs for the road and drainage process in a timeline. So those items don't appear in the application narrative, so I just would ask the applicant if he has looked at the cost estimates and or a timeline for the work.
I already have a proposal from my site contractor.
Yeah, and because the home audience.
So yes, I have a
thousands.
price for my site contractor before I even start this process.
Okay.
We're gonna do about this, so what's it gonna entail, so I don't make sure it's worth it to start the project.
Right.
To start the process, I'm sorry.
And it's not a personalized question, but it's whether, the nature of the question, what the bond does is shows that the applicant has those funds available to undertake the work.
I
So,
understand.
I think there are a couple questions. The board has not approved a definitive subdivision in many years.
True.
My recommendation would be with the one clarification on the covenants. You've given a pretty clear indication of where you'd like to go. I would recommend continuing the hearing
Information on that?
to get a little bit of information.
So we're going to
build.
expect you to put together pricing so that we can consider.
I think that would be useful information for the board to have. It's an understanding of the cost of this work and some way to acknowledge that you anticipate having the funds to be able to do the work in lieu of providing the bond.
It's $40,000 for the paving and.
We'll need some paperwork
And
to
a
sort of
timeline.
show.
Yeah, sure, that, just so you know.
So that it's kind of an alternative.
Timeline, so
Yep.
it's a schedule like this is we started in May and done by June.
Right.
It appears we may be
whatever.
meeting again next Tuesday.
Let me ask a question,
Yeah.
because you had mentioned earlier tonight about put the house up first. Like,
Right, and
that would be backwards if I may.
Yep.
Like, the road should be put in first and showing that, look, here we are,
Yeah.
it's legal.
So there's a couple questions about how this would be conditioned properly. So I think, a couple of the issues raised by the neighbors are what's happening there now. And if there's a question, there's a process to look at that question of what's happening on that property now versus what will be happening in the future. And so I have not been able to put pen to paper to figure out what is the proper condition. I believe that in this scenario, there would be some kind of condition that sort of dictates that the future use of this new parcel would be residential in nature. So I think that's a safeguard that the planning board can put on the subdivision.
Well, but he's planning on holding a home office, which is essentially what he's saying. He's got
my existing home office.
a home office, but after you make the subdivision, it's going to remain there in the
Yes.
second lot, right?
Yeah.
And you're
The
saying
intent is to make this for my son.
that you want a condition that says that it
Yeah.
won't? Is that what you're saying? You want to
I
change
think
it?
that the board should consider a condition to ensure that that's the case moving forward.
Well, I think what happens here a little bit too, everybody keeps calling this a shop, and it is a shop, but ultimately, it's not a commercial property. It's not zone commercial, it's not industrial, it's my outbuilding. So like, I think there's some confusion of it being a business after I cut this off.
Yeah, that's the thing. If
It's
we
not-
just put a condition in saying that it will, the condition is simple, that
Yeah,
that
it's not
lot
a
will
commercial
remain
building.
for a residential use or something along that line. he'll still be able to have a home office there, right? So,
Right.
because that falls under residential.
Well, and the only
use.
trick, you know, not to talk too much inside baseball here, the trick is that it will become residential, because currently it's not a residential structure. So that, it's not a question of, you've been pretty clear stating that that's your intent to build a new residence there, but I think through the process of subdivision where you have this kind of, everything about this is unique. So it's a safeguard of some type of condition to ensure that at some point it will be residential. I think it's just important given the
I have
circumstances.
one question on that, if I may, quick. My only concern is I don't want to have a restraint on, you gotta build the house tomorrow and have it done by this summer, because I'm not ready to build that yet with other jobs you have lined up
Sure.
and so on and so forth.
Yep.
So that's the only thing I don't want to have.
We'll have to put that
pressure.
condition down in our next meeting, because I get the sense that we'll continue this, but I think you're right to put something in, but I want to make sure that it doesn't overstep.
Correct.
Anything else?
Yeah, the easement language, and the deed less so, but the easement language is something that typically should be reviewed by the city attorney and incorporated into the decision, so that has not happened yet.
Okay.
But it's been provided, which is a step in the right direction, so.
How long do you think that might take?
It depends on, I would recommend that the board not consider moving this to next Tuesday. I don't think that's enough time just to piece together the puzzle of what's left.
Makes sense.
So without proposing something that's too far out, you know, maybe March 19th.
The 19th? Do you
Possibly.
think you could have your timeline and cost assessment for the purposes of generating a bond by then?
Sure.
I certainly wouldn't mind seeing any suggestions that you could put in writing about purchasing temporary fencing for when you're doing construction to conceal the construction efforts, the trucks, the materials from your neighbors, to provide them a little bit of obscurity, if you're willing.
Well, I just want to be honest about, like, to add more fencing, you have to see the property, understand it, or it's a piece of, the back up here. The more I just have a flat piece of paper with some square lines on it. You know, the trees right now are currently over here, they kind of round around over here.
It's that back end, I think, where your neighbor was particularly concerned, that very upper.
Yeah, we have a fence that goes from this over to here.
Is it
There's
just
a
chain link?
here to here.
It's a chain link fence?
This is a chain link fence.
What's the one in the back?
Here to here, which belongs to my neighbors. And then my stockade, my 6-foot-high stockade fence starts somewhere about the front corner of my garage here, goes back here and all the way across here.
Okay.
In play, you know. It blocks, like, you can't walk through anywhere if you wanted to.
Okay.
Okay. So, so you need to get the cost assessment. You're gonna go to the attorney. What else? I just wanna make sure we have a list.
Just one other,
stuff.
so I think that if, it might make sense to go back to Mark and talk about, are there options to that sump? Maybe a swale is a good idea too, and it would be a lot less
I talked to
maintenance.
Mark Reed today, and the area in here is too flat to
For a
produce
swale.
one of those rain gardens.
Yep.
So this
That's
is
the option. Okay, that's
the
why.
best option.
That makes sense.
And Dan Murphy's comments, he was feeling it was too deep.
Yep.
So we're gonna look into another option.
Okay, good.
I think part of that, if you want, if it's not clear, I mean, one of the questions that's unknown is the depth of groundwater. So
Yeah.
I think there seems to be a question with the depth of groundwater, what would be the options?
Yeah.
Once you know that, so.
So that needs a little bit more clarification, is the depth of groundwater, and then what option would really work, given the depth
I
of
have a
groundwater.
quick question.
Yeah.
I mean, Mark didn't even quite answer, well, he kind of answered it. Obviously, this is a pretty technical thing for such a small area. It's
Area,
to
drainage
maintain,
area.
it's something to install.
It is.
Who could we ask, or how do we approach? Again, if, you have to look at my property to understand it. This isn't draining, this isn't drainage for the whole road.
No, no.
It's basically
that's
drainage
supposed
for this part, you know, basically a portion of street I'm adding for my yard.
Yep.
Or, I'm sorry, for the new lot, which already has pavement all the way through here, and day-to-day rainstorms, it drains in the yard and doesn't go anywhere, but in the ground. So could it be an exclusion? I mean, this is in here because of your subdevelopment regulations.
Yes.
But when you look at it and go,
That's a question.
Yeah, I mean,
for
I
the city
think,
engineer.
I think that, you know, making the improvement, increasing the amount of impervious surfaces triggers the engineers to look at how that gets captured. So I think, and the stormwater report that was submitted, identified that as a mitigation measure that is pretty standard. So,
Right.
I
That's why I
think
ask, it's standard for a roadway, not just
Well, it's any
80 feet.
it's really any new impervious surfaces triggers that need
Okay.
to capture
Fair
that
enough. It does.
potential runoff. So I think,
It's a state requirement.
I think just taking the terrible sort of analogy of belts and suspenders is, I think, important, just because the idea is that the city's going to take this over at the end of the process. So I think having a little bit more time to
I'm gonna hold for one second.
dot the i's and cross the t's.
That's why I just wanted to ask
We
about
have
it.
another meeting
Wasn't
coming
making
up soon,
Yep.
and I don't want to go on too long. I just want to make sure that the things we've covered, that you'll be able to present the applicant, Mr.
Yep.
Backus, with a list of things that need to be accomplished. And we're targeting the 19th. Is that what we're thinking?
Yep.
And the only question is whether that's enough time. I do have some reservation whether the city attorney
Can get information.
can get everything by the 19th, and what ideally we'd have the information the week prior. So my ask is, if we push this to April 2nd, it'll give the definite time necessary to pull this all back together.
I'd rather have you take your time to get it done, so it doesn't turn into third, fourth, fifth week.
Right.
That makes
Okay.
sense to me.
That sounds good. So
Time
April
to
2nd.
Yeah, because I see that there is another application on the 19th, and there are projects that are a little bit further along. So if you're willing to accept the 2nd, then I think that gives us the necessary time to piece the technical elements back together
Absolutely.
in a format that would be suitable for the board. Okay.
Do we want to answer some of this question?
Yes. Come on up to the podium, please. Sorry, I totally forgot to look back at you.
And then we're closing the hearing.
Yeah. Yeah, you got one to add in? Let him talk, and then I'll throw you in.
The problem you have in submitting presentation for someone is that you don't know if the answer that you get is sufficient for them. But what would be the next course of action for Dr. Packard if she feels that the noise is an issue? What should she do?
We don't have a noise
File
ordinance in
file a
Easthampton, so it
complaint?
follows to the state level noise ordinance, and she would call the police for a noise event. Am I correct about that?
Yep, and I understand that someone spoke to the assistant planner this afternoon, and so if there is a question about the use of the garage, there is the zoning enforcement officer who would look at whether the use is actually a business operation or whether it's qualified as kind of described as an accessory structure. There is some certain liberties that you can take in your own garage to store stuff. So at a certain point, something could tip over into a business operation. So if there's and this goes sort of generally across the board, if a neighbor has a concern about the use of a property, there's the zoning enforcement officer who has a set of procedures that they would.
Yeah, right,
follow
I
to
had
look.
more in mind, and this is, don't shoot the messenger, convey. Construction vehicles or delivery vehicle specific.
Right.
That's what she has.
So I think it goes back to the idea of what may be happening currently, would be something you could pursue potentially with the zoning enforcement officer to, talk about what's currently happening in the garage, which would be different than what will happen after the subdivision is approved, after the road is constructed, and with conditions that it become residential. So there's what's happening now and what will be happening in the future, and the person who wrote that email may need to separate the two, because I don't think those concerns that were raised are applicable in this discussion about the future use.
Right, it's passed, but it's something that still needs to be resolved.
Right.
I would strongly recommend a conversation between the neighbors. That's always the best way to work.
Very true.
Yep. Thank you very much. Harry, you had something you wanted to toss in?
Yeah, would it make any sense putting another light into that street, or would that be just unnecessary?
I definitely think the two big things we talked about were the covenant, which included the bond issue, and the light as one potential thing.
Put a light on the end of the street, you said it's what, 200-something feet from the end? How far would it be from where the present light is to the very end of that street? How far would it be?
The question is that something the applicant would even do? I mean, the city pays for the city lights, right? I mean, they'd be taking it over in the easement. Would they set it up and put it in, and then we would have to run power to it?
I would suggest that the board may not have enough information
Yeah, I think
on
we should talk to
the
DPW.
lighting question at this point. So maybe that's something that
it needs to be
can come back
Yeah, I think
for a
it's
final
DPW
judgment
or-
of the planning board. So
good
if I understood it correctly, the road is 900 feet plus 100 added, let's say. And there's one streetlight. So, you know, whether you want to add one at the end, which would be not the equivalent. So what about the beginning of the street
Yeah,
versus the middle of the street towards the end? So if that's an important question for the board, then you would request more information from the applicant. Where's the street light currently? What distance would it, the infrastructure involved in that?
I think seeing it, if you could put a little diagram for us, that would probably make it easier for us to rule it in or out, okay? For the next meeting. All right, Chris.
All right, I move to, what's the word? To continue this hearing. Yeah, I'm crashing hard. Continue the hearing for Thomas M. and Shelby M. Backus seeking a subdivision under Easthampton subdivision regulations for 67 Division Street to April 2nd.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Can you set a time? Sorry. Can you set a time?
Is there anything else on the agenda?
Not currently.
6 p.m.
6 p.m.
Thank you. Any discussion beyond that? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any against or abstentions? It's unanimous. Thank you very, very much. And I will go get Jesse, who's been extremely patient.
Same place, same back channel.
This is not functioning. So.
Okay.
You were very patient. Told you it was a complex one.
It was.
Thank you, Chris.
Jim Valancourt go home?
What's that?
Jim Valancourt go home?
No, I think it was the bathroom break. I'm guessing.
Actually, no, he hasn't been here in a while, though, has he? Oh, Jim, that's Jim, sorry, I'm Chet.
Chet.
I was thinking Chet.
He ended
Yeah.
up, yeah.
Oh,
It's unfortunate.
oh, it's Tom. I'm sorry to hear that.
Right.
Just the last one.
I hope so. You didn't add anything else while I was gone, did you?
Well, we have a next Tuesday now.
I know.
You have to make the payment.
No, that one got pushed
I
to
get a
April
bang out of that, you know, I don't give a shit if one street light within 1,000 feet of it. What's that got to do with not seeing where you're going?
We definitely, it'll help to see. It'll help
You know
to
what I
see.
mean? You're gonna have another house there, gonna be 3 houses in that one little area, so why not have a light there?
All right, here's Mr. Valancourt. All right, moving right along. Continued public hearing for River Valley Co-op, seeking a special permit at 228 and 232 Northampton Street.
The chair has reappeared.
I was gonna say welcome back to you, but I guess
Welcome back to you.
welcome back to me as well. All right, so you want to update us on where we are with?
Let me just give you kind of the short list of things that we'd like to get to tonight if we can. I know the hour is getting late, but I'm going to ask Jeff to show you very minor updates to the site plan.
Okay.
Then I'd like to get Jason Adams up and talk about the updated traffic study and that information. I'm going to talk to you about solar at some point.
Okay.
But I'm not sure that that's like the most pressing issue at this moment for the board. So with that, let me turn it over to Jeff and have him talk about the updated site plan.
Great, thank you.
Great, thanks. Again, Jeff Swire from the Berkshire Design Group. Real quick, we did
Jeff,
get...
I know it's awkward. Can you step behind the podium so that the microphone
sorry,
for
you
everyone
bet.
at home is...
So just to update everybody, we did get Conservation Commission approval and a stormwater permit approval on the 11th of February, just in terms of process. With regards to any changes to the site plan that were nothing substantive change on the site plan as a result of both of those approvals. The one addition that has happened is we've added 2 short-term parking spaces on the north side of the building for takeout purposes for the Captain Jacks. That's really the only change that's happened to the site plan. And yeah, so we provided an updated, black and white plan of the layout plan. Alan and then others will get into some of the details of the other material that was provided. So,
Great.
That's it.
Jason, you're up.
Is it all right if I talk from behind this board, or?
Yeah, I think that's probably better. That's recording you for the.
You can move that one over here if you prefer.
There you go. And you can, yeah, you can have that to the, we have a copy of that, so if you want, you can turn that to the people in the audience.
Okay.
And the camera.
Good evening, my name is Jason Adams. I'm a traffic engineer with McMahon Associates. Coming out of our last meeting, we were tasked with updating the traffic impact study that was completed in the spring of last year and had some outdated information. So I believe you have a copy of that report now.
Yeah.
I'll give you the quick overview, and I'm happy to answer questions at whatever level the board feels is appropriate. So coming out of the last meeting, we conducted new traffic volume counts at the O'Neill Street and Lyman Street intersections. So we counted those last month at the beginning of February, weekday afternoon and Saturday midday peak period. So we're now working with a fresh data set that includes the Cumberland Farms that was recently built that was not included in the previous counts, as well as the marijuana facility. And in addition to counting those new counts, we also included the intersection of Florence Road, which had come up as a potential intersection to look at to the south. So we have a broader study area. We also have some more information about the traffic volumes, the expected trip distribution to and from the site, and we updated the trip generation to accurately reflect the site plan, inclusive of Captain Jack's staying, which was not included in the previous study. So we compiled all that information into the traffic impact study. As part of this, we also took a look at the traffic signal timings at the intersection of O'Neill Street. It's our understanding that Mass DOT has recently made changes at that intersection. I was able to get a copy of the updated traffic signal plan just yesterday from Mass DOT. So we have up-to-date information at the intersection. As part of this project, we would be proposing to work with Mass DOT to best optimize those traffic signal timings. My understanding is that the recent change at the intersection was mostly a safety-related change to separate the O'Neill Street approach from the driveway street approach, so those move at separate times. That can tend to have a bit of an operational impact because now more of the time is coming away from the mainline movements. So as part of this project, we would work with Mass DOT, share our traffic volume information and our analysis to best optimize those traffic signal timings. What we can show is that the project itself, when we forecast the trips related to the project onto those study area intersections, would not have a noticeable impact on the operation. So it's not to say that it's going to be better than it is today, but we can mitigate the impact of the project, which is our goal from a traffic engineering standpoint. So,
can I ask the date of that O'Neill Street change?
What's that?
O'Neill Street change. You said it was recently changed.
Yeah, I believe it was in the middle of January. The date I've heard is January 18th, but I'm not exactly positive.
But before you got the new data, at least.
Correct. Okay. Yes. So the traffic volumes were collected after Mass DOT made that change.
And are they usually pretty receptive to sort of businesses and communities that are suggesting of those lights?
I think that they can be receptive. This is obviously an area that they are aware of. Right. They're certainly reacting to information that they've received. They don't always have all of the latest data, so the data that we've collected is certainly more recent than anything that they had used at the time.
Yep.
And often they would look to, let's say, a project team like ours to provide some of the analysis and other consulting work that is outside of the state budget and ability to do in a timely manner. So sometimes they do try to lean on a project such as this, and they of course want to be good neighbors as well. And
they have a lot of intersections.
They have a lot of it. Yes, yes, they do. So what we're showing is that the project doesn't have any significant impact on the operations of the surrounding roadway network. In addition to those traffic signal timings, we are also looking at a couple other mitigation measures just to try to further improve the operations of both the proposed project as well as the roadway network. So we are in the process of evaluating the potential of adding a new left turn lane into the project site. So coming from Northampton Route 10, turning into the site, that would separate the left turning vehicles from the through traffic headed towards O'Neill Street. Trying to see it before this driveway here. That's something that operationally we show isn't specifically needed for this project, but we do feel it's a benefit to the city, the state, and the project. So it's something we're pursuing. It would need a permit from Mass DOT, so it's not anything that we can control ourselves. So it's just something that we're looking to evaluate there. We are also in the process of looking to readjust the alignment of Lyman Street. So right now it comes in at a skewed angle. There's no specific safety issue that we can see, but certainly if we were able to bring it in at more of a 90-degree angle, give more conventional viewing angles for vehicles turning to and from Lyman Street, it's an overall benefit. So that's another piece that we are evaluating. Again, it would need Mass DOT approval. It's probably a project that we would work with the city on, as it's a rather large-scale project for something of this sort. And we are also looking to add sidewalk along the west side, the site side of Route 10 to connect to O'Neill Street to provide a better pedestrian connection. So a couple things that are somewhat outside of the control of the roadways that we can control, but we are certainly looking to have as little an impact as we can and as good a project as we can, and that's where we are from a traffic perspective.
What's the process for getting DOT approval for the left turn and for the realignment there on Lyman Street?
So each of those projects, they're somewhat individual projects. There's a process for the driveway itself, there's a process for the left turn lane, and there's a process for Lyman Street. Each of those require an access permit from Mass DOT because there would be geometric changes to the state highway layout. So we would be submitting on behalf of the project team an access permit for each of those projects. They would each be reviewed on an individual merit basis, but also holistically. Mass DOT certainly wants to look at the project corridor as a whole and do their best to not just solve one specific issue if it's going to create something either now in the present or further on down the line. So
in your mind, does the special permit come first and then you go to DOT and say we've got this either with conditions or what have you, and now we're applying for the driveway access, the left turn lane, realignment of Lyman Street, or is that a process you can start and have an answer, or
so we have started that process with Mass DOT, but Mass DOT will not issue those access permits until we have approval from the city.
Okay.
So they're willing to work with us as long as they know that the city is in favor and generally in favor of the project, but they won't grant an access permit until they know the project is received by the city. So it's a little bit of a, kind of a chicken or the egg situation, but
right.
What we're trying to do is get Mass DOT and the city comfortable with the same thing, and then we have to follow the process, which is we're hoping to get approval from the city. That gives us the project. Once we have the project, we can pursue these other things with Mass DOT.
And are you taking the same approach with the city? I believe when we talked last time, the city has to be involved in moving the street, and then I think maybe there was some issue with the street signage on Lyman Street too, that city council has to deal with.
Do you want to speak to signage?
We can wait on the signage if you want, but have we
so there would
started
be city involvement, I think, is the short answer of that.
Okay, and that also is a process where you're anticipating waiting until the special permit is ruled on, and then you would then go and seek relief from the city on those items?
If I may. So, my understanding, and I'll defer to Jason, obviously, because he's the expert here. But what I understand is that the permit for entering Northampton Street from Lyman, that reconfiguration, is not going to be a big issue because we're not actually in the layout of the state highway.
Right. Okay.
As far as
DOT approval, is that
right?
that's
The
what you mean?
DOT
Okay.
approval.
Yeah.
We met with the mayor. We had a long meeting with the mayor. She's aware of the Lyman Street reconfiguration. We've been talking about ways to fund this and the ways to get that done. That is absolutely going to be done. That is absolutely going to be done one way or another. The left turn lane, what I would ask this board to consider is approving the left turn lane but not requiring it, because it's out of our control. It's completely out of our control. And so we don't really want to hold up this project, particularly given that the engineer is saying that it would be a plus, but it's not really necessary. And in this room, no one wants that left turn lane more than this woman right here. She wants this left turn lane very badly, and we will donate land to the project to widen that. But we're just out of our control.
Right. Understood.
And so that's what we would ask for. The Lyman is a definite. We're definitely going to do that, because if trucks are going to come out of there, and they're going to have to come out of there because of the geometry of the exit on Lyman, they're going to have to go down to Northampton Street, and we don't want that angle intersection for the trucks on Lyman coming off of Lyman. So.
And then as far as, there's a conversation about the exclusions on Lyman Street, I think, and I don't know, Alan, you may want to, further expand on this, but it is all city-controlled right away. We're certainly willing to work with the city and propose, I think in the packet of information, there's some proposed signage excluding, left turns for trucks, at the exit of where the loading dock is, up at this end of the site. So prohibiting trucks from turning left. And then a sign down at the intersection here, again, prohibiting, truck traffic other than deliveries, to the site. So, we're certainly willing to work with the city to accommodate those, signs, but again, it's all city-controlled roadways, so we're sort of at the mercy of.
Yeah, that was one of the ones that I know we talked about last time, and we don't have the authority to change city signs, but then I'm sitting there thinking, I guess if we approve the plan that says the trucks are exiting there, I mean, I guess the city with the trucks from exiting there until you get the signs changed, right? So I mean, in some ways we would approve a special permit that would require you to violate city ordinances, but I guess you couldn't do that until you get the signs changed anyways. Is that sort of the same way you guys see that? I mean, I can't, because we can't change it. I don't want to make you get the signs changed before anything else happens, but.
The only thing is that there is currently an exclusion on Lyman Street, and there is currently a sign on the Route 10 side as you enter. And I know there's other people who can talk about this more specifically, but I think in particular, the one that would be on River Valley Market property, which would be preventing or discouraging left turns out onto Lyman from the site, that is something that would be.
That's something we can require. But
right
now, the trucks aren't allowed on Lyman Street at all, right?
Well, there's some technical questions about. So I looked to a couple of the experts about the technical nature of what is currently excluded. However, I just wanted to make the point that, in particular, that no left turn. There are a couple signs that can be within the project site.
Within their property, right?
Yes, and that are more suggestive but important, that fall outside of the exclusion zone, which would be in the city council realm.
Good point. Thank you.
So there was a question about what was your question about the exclusion?
I guess the status of we've sort of heard about the truck exclusion signs on Lyman Street and what there actually is there and what the ordinance says about that, I guess.
Well, there's no ordinance.
Okay.
Okay, there was a vote of town meeting, I guess it would have been back then. Actually, there was a vote for a truck exclusion, but it didn't go into effect for 8 years after the initial vote because they waited for the Florence Road intersection to be reconfigured before they implemented the truck exclusion. Interestingly, according to the website for MassDOT, there's no truck exclusion on Lyman. I talked to the engineer at District 2, and he said there is one. So I guess there is one, but it doesn't show up on MassDOT's website.
Okay.
And, a truck exclusion is a through truck exclusion. Just like Raynor gets their deliveries by trucks to their property, they do that because they're on Lyman and they have to be able to get deliveries. So it doesn't prohibit deliveries to the property. It just prohibits through traffic, truck traffic.
Okay.
And so what we would propose to do is to put up signage on our land, whatever signage the city council and the mayor agree we can do within the public way. And to inform our vendors that you enter off of Northampton Street and you go back to Northampton Street and not to go on Lyman.
Understood. Okay. Jim, I can see you're itching. You got some traffic questions.
Well, just on the edge of my seat. First off, what a well-bound book. Thank you.
Really, really pretty.
I just want to check on some basic numbers here.
Sure.
Am I correct that Saturday midday peak hours between Captain Jack's and River Valley, you're looking at 381 total per hour, page 18. And weekday would be 279. So you're talking about 381 trips at the worst case scenario. And I know you kind of went on to illuminate the difference between new and pass-by trips coming up. But in general, 381 is kind of your top number of the kind of traffic you're getting in there.
Right, that's, yeah, based on industry projections, certainly it's an estimation.
And then you've done a great job of breaking down every turn and every possible street combination. So I just wanted to kind of put that number out there on the record. We actually have talked, the numbers are pretty close to what they were, you know, when we discussed it last. It doesn't seem that out of line to me. But the only thing that I'm really concerned about, and you kind of talked about it a little bit, is about will there be a change? The big discussion last time we were talking about this was a change on the O'Neill Street. And you said they've just changed it, but for something else, for a driveway.
Correct.
I'm not quite sure which driveway you're referring to. Is it the bank? I don't.
Yeah, it's so what we would call the eastbound approach. So the approach that is part of the traffic signal. Up until January, that was going at the same time as the O'Neill westbound approach, which is certainly a dominant flow, which creates, in Mass DOT's estimation, that there's not specific safety issues, but certainly someone had a safety issue with it. So what they've done is separate the bank driveway from the O'Neill so now they go at separate times. It's called split phasing.
Okay.
Was it the bank property?
Oh, sorry.
Or was it? I don't know if that was actually clarified which property it
No,
was.
it's the medical building.
The medical, yes.
Was it the Gospel Eye company?
Yeah,
So
Gospel Eye, yeah.
Right. I don't think it was the bank property because that's
Right.
off
Yeah,
of the
the
intersection.
property that ties in at the signal.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not quite.
It's not really on that view. Okay, right.
Okay, so it's a Valley Medical. So
Actually, it wasn't Valley Medical either. It's the
Gospel Eye Care and that.
the next plaza over. I just wanted to clarify that. I don't know how important it is, but if you're coming up O'Neill to Route 10, there's a business complex off to the right a little bit, but the driveway is centered right at that intersection.
Yeah.
And that was my understanding
Yes.
from the conversations that was the driveway that the signal timing was changed for.
So someone began a process, there was a complaint or a concern, and this just went through in January. And now what's going to happen is you're going to approach them again and say, we need to really adjust and tweak the timing. Here's all the information. And it's assumed that they'll take that tweak into effect, but still try to create easing of the clear traffic that I've seen. I think on average it's very good. It's just when traffic's up, there's a lot of weight, and it's definitely that right turn out of alignment or left is a real pain. You're doing a lot to fix that by straightening it.
Yes.
But that O'Neill intersection is, for me personally, just a real concern as to making sure that because I think that's really the gatekeeper of everything that happens there.
Yes.
To make sure that happens in a way that's going to mitigate traffic. 381 stops per hour. I think it's a significant number, which is great. More business to you. I think that's wonderful, but I think that is an area that we have to be really concerned about, and making sure that O'Neill piece is done right is very important. And that's all I have to say.
Yeah, and just to clarify on the 381, that's the total of the entering and the exiting. So that's 190 cars.
Okay.
Right. So if you want to think about that, it's 3 cars a minute over the course of an hour. It's not 380.
So I'm glad you told
right.
me.
So it's the
in and
combination
out.
of entering and exiting. So those movements all happen. Those happen at the 2 driveways, and then they disperse north and south, and so it's not as though we're adding 380 new cars to any one movement, and that's again over the course of an hour.
Yeah, John.
So the city engineer has a letter in front of the board, and I know it came to you late, but before the board members potentially read that, can you talk in the most basic way so it can be understood the level of service concept and how that is looked at for an intersection like O'Neill and the build, no build? Can you give, because the city engineer's letter talks about that a little bit, so I think it would be good to introduce what that means before that letter is read. And I don't know, it's LOS, but level of service, can you explain that for
Sure.
O'Neill in particular?
So what we try to do as traffic engineers is understand the amount of vehicle delay, so counted in seconds, of the average vehicle. If one vehicle came through and experienced 10 seconds of delay and one vehicle came through and experienced 20 seconds of delay, the average vehicle delay between those 2 vehicles would be 15 seconds. That is the basis of us being able to understand if a project such as this has an adverse impact on a specific movement or a specific intersection. in the vicinity of our site. So we take the traffic volumes that we counted in February, we grow those out to a future year so that we get background traffic, and we're dealing in a conservative manner because we know that there's going to be development. We know there's going to be changes in traffic flow. We could see it even from 2018 counts to 2019 counts. And then what we do is we use an analysis tool that's based on industry standards to develop what we call a level of service. The level of service is based on the amount of average vehicle delay for each of the approaches to an intersection. So at the O'Neill intersection, there's a delay for the O'Neill approach. There's a delay for the northbound movement, for the southbound movement, and all those get factored in together so that we can understand how the intersection operates without our project. And then we layer on the trips that you were talking about and understand how the intersection would operate with the project. It's the best way that we as traffic engineers can understand impacts and help you as a city figure out if this is a project that fits well within your traffic and is going to be impacting your residents. What that analysis tells us is that the project, as expected, makes the intersection work a little bit worse than it would without the intersection, without the project in place. And that's where we look to work with Mass DOT and the city to mitigate the impacts of our project by sharing our information with the state and looking to improve the traffic signal timings to more efficiently process the vehicles, thereby reducing the average vehicle delay of each vehicle and reducing the overall level of service associated. And level of service is a A through F grading school, just like a grading just like school. So you're hoping for A. That's pretty unlikely in this type of area. A level of service C or D is typically what you're going to see. There are movements that are going to operate at level of service F, and that looks to be the case without this project. And that indicates that that intersection, as you're stating, it has operational issues. And so what we're trying to do is just improve that as best we can, working with the state to do so that is an intersection that they control.
And then the report also talks about sort of the build and the no-build projection. Can you just explain? I mean, we've looked through this report, but everyone here has it.
So the no-build, the future no-build is what is going to happen, what we expect to happen if our project does not move forward. So it's all of the things that are out there, all the vehicles that are out there today. It's all of the vehicles that are out there associated with known projects. So we included 2 marijuana projects that we know are likely to move forward. It also includes traffic volumes that are just associated with general growth in the area. So the traffic volumes in this area are shown to grow at about 0.5% a year, but conservatively we used 1% growth per year. So we're forecasting out all of the volumes that we can using the best information possible. That creates our no-build scenario. We then add in the trips associated with our project, which becomes the build scenario. And in this case, in this project, we also have a build with mitigation. So we looked at it as if we could just plop the project down, and then we did what we can to reduce the impacts of the project on the roadway network.
Great. I do think I'm going to read in, we got a report from the city engineer, Dan Murphy, and I think it makes sense to just read it. It's only 1 page, and I can work on my public reading skills. So. This is dated today, Ray River Valley Market Traffic Study Review. I have reviewed McMahon's revised traffic study for River Valley Market located on Northampton Street, Route 10, a Massachusetts Department of Transportation jurisdictional roadway. Mass DOT has jurisdiction of Northampton Street, including all signalized intersections from the Northampton City line to the bridge south of Mill Street. Due to some questions about some aspects of the initial work, additional traffic counts were completed on Saturday, February 2nd and Thursday, February 7th to take into account recent development since the original counts completed in April of 2018. McMahon also included additional traffic projection data for currently approved but not yet completed projects in the revised study. Traffic study results indicate that peak hour, or worst case, overall level of service at the Northampton-O'Neill intersection is predicted to reduce from LOSC, existing, to LOSE in both the 2026 build and no build conditions. LOSC indicates a delay of 20 to 35 seconds. LOSE indicates a delay time of 50 to 80 seconds. The specific longest predicted delay is the southbound left turn movement from Northampton to O'Neill, because there is no dedicated left turn lane for this movement. Predicted delay for this movement is estimated at 125.6 seconds without mitigation reducing to 92.8 seconds with mitigation. Both conditions for this movement are LOS F, greater than 80-second delay. The peak hour delay, especially for the southbound left turn, is concerning, but the LOS condition exists with or without the project. Mass DOT is aware of the predicted future delay increases. McMahon has offered to work with Mass DOT and make recommendations on signal timing changes to help mitigate the delay at the Northampton-O'Neill intersection. McMahon also evaluated additional mitigation, including a northbound left turn lane into the development, granting the city a triangle of land to allow for realignment of Lyman Street to configure intersection angle to 90 degrees, sidewalk extensions on the west side of Northampton Street for improved pedestrian access, working with vendors to ensure all are aware of and abide by the Lyman Street truck exclusion. Mitigation measures accepting vendor communication are subject to review and approval by Mass DOT. The city has long desired to correct the skewed alignment of Lyman Street. The project will bring development to a key commercially zoned, long vacant parcel. Mitigation proposed and evaluated will improve the project and the road network. The applicant has pledged to work with vendors to ensure truck traffic is minimized through Lyman Street to Florence Road to maintain the truck exclusion. Assurance from Mass DOT that improvements to the Lovefield-O'Neill intersection could enter planning stages with the information provided by the study would be welcome. Dan Murphy.
That was a ringing, if not platonic, endorsement.
Where's Lovefield and O'Neill intersection? What's that one?
So I believe Lovefield and O'Neill, and that reference is O'Neill Street coming up to Route 10. So later, further down O'Neill,
it joins up with Lovefield.
It joins up with Lovefield, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't understand what that's about. Okay.
Okay. Any other questions about
No.
the traffic at least?
I think it's well covered.
Okay. Sure. I'm tempted to open up public comment on the traffic issue and sort of keep this discreet. Does that make sense to board members?
At your leisure.
All right. A question or a comment?
Hi there. Okay, I didn't hear about this until Sunday. They didn't post their information until Saturday. So I didn't have very much time to do an awful lot of research, but I have done lots of research on this truck exclusion on Lyman Street since 1991.
Can you just start off with your name and address for us, please?
Reiterate everything you just said.
And then you'll stand by the microphone and say it again.
Okay. My name is Alexander Kwalik. I live on 19 Lyman Street. I was involved with the truck exclusion back in 1991. I have to give you a little background on this.
Okay.
Okay, back in '84, I bought 2 building lots up into the S's. Does everybody know where the S's are?
No.
Okay, I purchased 2 lots up there. I built my house on the second lot. I saved the corner lot. Over the course of it happened shortly after I moved in. Project started to begin construction. In the course of probably 4 years, I lost approximately 8 feet of my property because of the trucks shortcutting. Every time they came through the S's, these were not little dump trucks, these were 10-wheelers or they were tractor dumps. And there were fleets of them. And they ran 8 hours a day, 6 days a week for a couple of years. They kept on taking the corner, until the town finally went in and put a berm in. I don't know why they waited so long. I petitioned, I took care of everything, talked to everybody about it. And when they did come in to put in the berm, they took another 2 feet. So when you go up around that corner, the house that's on the inside corner, not the big old brick house, but the 121 Lyman Street, their boundary marker of their property is under the curb. Okay, so we petitioned the town. We had to petition the Board of Selectmen. There was nothing but problems for at least 2 years. Everything got rejected. There was some headbutting going on about this whole thing. Don't ask me why, but it happened. We had to do 2 truck counts. I had to pay for one personally out of my pocket. Don't ask me why, But after I paid for it, was notarized, it was rejected by the Easthampton Highway. All right, so we had the town had to hire a firm to come in and do the count. Progressed over a number of years to where it finally passed in. The counts went to Boston, everything was okayed. I had to petition Boston. There was a lot of things that were not happening. So it finally got passed. The exclusion got passed for Lyman Street. But all of a sudden, the Florence Road intersection came up, which was determined that they couldn't make the turn to turn back because that's the exclusion. It goes down, instead of cutting through Lyman Street, it continues down Florence Road to where there is a light now and then back up. It adds an extra half a mile of distance onto the trucks, right? When they said that had to be done, I had to petition the state. So I was all practiced up from petitioning the town to get in touch with the state. I had lots of help. I had a lot of friends in Boston. Things moved along. But in all, okay, I don't want to spend or try to keep you awake here, but it took 11 years to get this done. I had to petition the Park and Rec Department to take part of Katy Brook Park. Everybody knows where Katy Brook Park is. No, you don't. It's in
It's right in the V there.
You said
it's right in the V.
Katy Brook. Oh, I misheard.
Katy Brook, that's the name of the park. It's right there
Right in
in
the V.
the triangle of Northampton Street and Florence Road. I petitioned them to get 15 feet, which I did. We ended up doing 3 vehicle counts. I tried to look through their information today. I couldn't understand it. I don't know. Do you guys understand it?
The traffic
The
study?
traffic study?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I do.
I mean, it's
All right.
dense. There's a lot of numbers in there for sure.
There
but-
certainly
see
is.
a lot of traffic studies.
Okay, when we did it, we had to do 24 hours for 7 days. And what our counts came up with, back in 94, I think it was, I have all the paperwork. You know, they said that they didn't know if it was official, that it is a truck exclusion. I have all of that. If you need anything, I've got it. I want to be a real good neighbor.
We don't plan on using your part of Lyman.
I'm hoping not.
That.
I'm hoping.
Take it to the bank.
Okay, what I need some help though. So we did all that stuff. When we did the counts back then in the 90s, we had counts of like, it averaged out of the 5 weekdays, business days, we had like 1,100 vehicles coming through. 1,100 a day. Doing that little shortcut. And about 9% of those were heavy commercial vehicles. And all we needed was 5%. So we certainly made it in the range. Petitioned Boston and blah, blah, blah. After the intersection got done, as a matter of fact, when I was petitioning to get that done, they wanted me to petition the town to get West Street done. But I told the town to do it themselves. Okay, so now that got it, in 2001, it was finally completed. Signs were up, it's all done. And I do have paperwork between Mr. Tausnick, who was the mayor at the time, and Mr. John Hoy, who is the district director, and all the paperwork is done. What I'm looking at, just so happened, I wanted to change the configuration of the signs on Lyman Street a while ago. I've been talking to Chief of Police, I've gone to Mass Highway, I've been to Northampton, and most of the signage that is put on streets like ours is done within the town. Any speed limit, stuff like that, the town has some flexibility unless it's getting to a real hazard or something like that. As it is right now, there's this sign here. I know it's kind of far away, but it says all vehicles over 2.5 tons. It's kind of difficult. And actually, the truck with the circle around it, I paid for those signs. There was a different sign up there. It said commercial vehicles, blah, blah, blah. And nobody would read them. So I, out of pocket, bought these signs, got permission, had the town put them up, and it has helped quite a bit. There's still problems with trucks shortcutting through there. What I've also put together was, when I went to the state to talk about all vehicles over 2.5 tons, any vehicle that I understand that has tandem wheels in the back can carry 2.5 tons. So a pickup truck, a large pickup truck, an F-350 dump truck, which all the landscapers use, Street. I've been talking with the police chief. Things are going to start happening with that.
I was going to say, what's the condition like now? Do people generally observe the truck exclusion, or is it not?
Big trucks.
Okay.
Big trucks. Every once in a while, and I'm looking into that also, is, and this could take forever, is the GPS, your navigation and all that. If you put something in, it's going to tell you to go this way, and the next thing you know, here comes a box truck, a tractor trailer through the neighborhood.
Right.
And that's because they're following the directions. Somebody told me that you can go through, and the truckers usually put in their information, and it'll show that there's an exclusion to keep out of there. All right. If that's so, I don't know.
So part of the current issue is maybe an enforcement issue of the existing truck exclusion.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And the chief and I have been talking about
Okay.
it. So when I was talking with the state about changing this also, this bottom section, the 2.5 ton limit, they said that's towns. Towns can take care of it. So in Northampton, heading towards the Coolidge Bridge, you notice there's all these signs in a row that say it's the truck exclusion, $300 fine.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Easthampton can do that. Easthampton can talk to the chief. The chief said he has no problem with it. He said, why stop at $300?
So a couple things. First of all, I mean, I don't know what our ordinance allows for or calls for the fine for that, but I think that there's some logic to that.
Yep.
But we have no control. That's like a city council issue. So we can't force the applicant, and we can't force the city to put those signs on the street. We can, as Jeff said, we can put conditions that require signage on the property, as far as leaving it. Although it's private property, so it's it's not strictly a requirement. I mean, you can say no left turn coming out of your entrance or your exit, and it's not, if you made that left turn, you're not breaking the law per se, you're violating the sign on the property. So it's a little bit different, but I think it does educate drivers that are there.
Okay, yeah, and I heard at the last meeting they were talking to their suppliers.
Yes.
About, don't go left because there's an exclusion on the street. I've learned that if it can't be enforced, it's not worth anything.
I think that's true.
You can talk to your suppliers all day long, and they're going to say. And all of a sudden, when they're delivering at 3 o'clock in the morning, there's not going to be anybody there to watch the trucks, and they're going to be going this way and that way. If it's not on the sign, and it's not there with a fine, and it can't be enforced, then it doesn't mean anything. So what I'm here tonight to talk to you people about is to put, which, and I didn't give you one, did I?
These?
Yes, I gave you one. All right, the front page, the front cover is something that I saw on your, that you posted up. It was,
Yep, that's their proposal.
yeah, okay, so I changed it a little bit to make it even simpler. All right, what I'd like to see put into an agreement or put together something to where when you do come out of their property, that the sign does say no left turns, but that the town also make it to where they can't go that way. The Coca-Cola plant in Northampton, when they come out of their turn there, they can only head one way. If they even come in, they come in and they gotta go out, right?
I live on that street. They go around and come back out through Bay Street, around the circle. So it's tough.
It is.
150 trucks a day.
It is. There's.
So, but I just got to come back. We can't require anybody to put signs up on those streets. That's a city council.
I'm just asking you to put it in your paperwork or your permitting that the signs that there is still the exclusion and that they will abide by the exclusion that says they will not go.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I think that anything we have would be conditioned with what they've proposed is that the truck their delivery trucks would come up from Northampton Street into there and go out to the right, and that they would have signage that says that, and that they would instruct all their delivery drivers to do that as well.
Right.
So that's sort of the extent of our authority over trucks on Lyman Street, is sort of what we can control, what the applicant does and what they do on their property. So we can certainly require that they tell their vendors. I don't think that they certainly have an incentive to inform their vendors, right? That's easy enough. It doesn't cost them anything, and they don't want to be a bad neighbor either. But we can't do anything as far as what the enforcement is, what the penalty is, or what the signs on Lyman Street say.
It's just not in our purview.
And
City council.
I tend to agree with you that a sign that just has truck exclusion versus one that says $300 fine, it's probably more effective if it says how much the fine is on there.
Yeah, no, and even at that, there's.
Right, so I mean, I think that, I think it would be, totally make sense to go to the city council and talk to them about this, but
Well-
it's outside the scope of our authority to deal with that part of the signage.
Right.
So we're stuck with just the parcel and the applicant. We can sort of, we can require them to do things on their property and with their vendors, but that's all we have here in
Okay,
front of
so
us.
that is what, you're saying that I have to go through the city council?
For
to do
the,
this?
for the new sign as far as what the penalty is on Lyman Street.
Oh, no, I'm not worried about that. The police, there's already been a direction with that already.
Yeah.
Okay.
And any signage in Lyman Street or on, as part of Lyman Street, that's a city council.
Okay, so the signs that say that there is an exclusion on there, I understand that they can make a delivery on the street.
Right.
They can make the delivery.
Yeah.
The oil man can make a delivery, the trash man can make a pickup, blah, blah, blah. What I'm hoping what would happen that there would be a clause in the permitting that would say, after this point here, to this point, to their property, they are not allowed. And that is not in your realm?
Do we have to give them a waiver? There's already.
Yeah, let's.
I want to ask this question.
Yeah.
There's already an exclusion that exists. So in order to allow them to have their trucks come in that limited distance, which I don't think anyone's arguing with, that it's, you want that. Don't we have to give them a waiver from that exclusion?
Well, I think what
Right
Attorney
now.
Seawald has said is that because it's a delivery, so like you don't have to give Duso Trucking an exception to come service the house.
And Raynor Doors gets their deliveries by truck. That's
But also,
appropriate.
that's where I think the applicant has more incentive than anybody, right? So if their delivery drivers start getting pulled over because they're not allowed to go 100 feet up Lyman Street,
I feel the same.
they're
That's
gonna
the
have to go to
fine.
the city council.
We would be pleased to join them at the city council to get permission to put a sign across line.
Yeah.
We're fine with putting the signs across line. We have no, and we've designed this geometry to make it difficult to turn left out of
Yeah.
here. And so this is a natural right turn out of here. This is, we're all on board with this.
Right, and that's
wanna
what I was trying to, I think they have every incentive in the world to keep all that truck traffic down by Northampton Street.
Right.
And I think you have every reason to be concerned because you've clearly been burned by this, for a generation. And you've got this in place. So I commend you guys if you're willing to cooperate with them, but I think that even if you're going by yourself, I think it's worth it to pitch this to the city council to make it clear.
You let me know, I'll show up and I'll speak to the River Valley Co-op and I'll say, we want the signs. We want signs across the street so when they're pulling out, they see that sign across the road.
Good answer.
So.
Like at Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola
It's a problem.
has that
Yep.
problem. They designed it. They even have it to where if a truck comes up the opposite way and pulls into their property, they can take a DOT number and call the police and they'll get ticketed.
Yeah.
So the other thing that we would agree to do, and we'd even accept it as a condition of the permit, is that we would include in our purchase orders and vendor contracts a clause not allowing left turns onto Lyman Street.
That's sort of what I imagined, is that it would go out with all of your.
However best we do this,
Right.
you know, we all agree that this is what we want done. Now, can I stand here and say that no trucks will ever make a left out of there, go up over the curb
Right.
and go left? No, I can't say that, but we're gonna do what's in our power to require, you know, the Florence
And I would
Road.
say, I mean, you're already pursuing remedies with the police for the sort of people that are skirting that anyway, so I think if that seems to be a problem, then hopefully some enforcement would, you know, correct that behavior too. It's not that many vendors, so I think that it's gonna be, if there's an issue with it, it's going to be, you know, corrected quickly.
There are, you know, there's a lot of wording things. When it says local, locally grown, or locally whatever, local means anything that can be trucked in a day. So people coming from, I don't know, New York State could be coming across down through Route 9, down Florence Road, and then they see this, their delivery comes through Lyman Street. That's a problem.
Right.
And it's often a GPS problem. It is often,
Yeah.
you know, the Waze takes, and that's what the trucks are. I'm the city solicitor in Northampton, so I kind of know about
Right.
some of these issues. And so, I mean, and that's what all the truck drivers say, that, you know, I did my Google Maps and it told me to turn on the street.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, Jeff.
Sorry, just on that note, was there any sense that something like getting it on Google Maps, is there any sense of the feasibility of that or process? I mean, is there any understanding of how that works?
Sorry. That's way.
My understanding, and Jason, and you may be able to tell you, but at least my understanding of it is that if it's listed on the state DOT exclusion, then that should be taken into consideration when they do these.
And so it sounds like that may be the problem, where it's not on the DOT website, even though District 2 knows about it. So maybe that's another sort of educational way we can inform DOT that it's not on the website, and maybe then Google or, you know, Waze are pulling that stuff. And
I told the engineer it's not on the website.
Okay.
Good news, more battles to be won.
One more specific question, I think, while both of you are up there. So, Mr. Seawald, when you said River Valley Market would be willing to put something together that says vendors will not take a left out of the property onto Lyman.
And also will approach from.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. Is that I wanted to ask if it was one and the same or different from having that same contract address delivery delivery vehicles coming from Florence Road down Lyman.
So I imagine there may be cars there may be trucks that are coming from, say, Florence, that their quickest route would be this way to cut across Lyman. And I think that if we're informing everybody to come around Florence Road onto Lyman Street, that will eliminate that side of the road too.
That's where I was saying that at Coca-Cola, they have signs at both ends. If they go out the other way towards Bate Street, all right, Bate Street, they will be ticketed. There's a sign right there that says, and if they catch them, whatever. I know how many they catch in Easthampton. So.
Well, so there's something in here for the board to consider. So River Valley Market is willing to put together something to express their commitment to working with your vendors on not coming off Lawrence Road and not turning off Lyman back on. And so where I think we can put at least something in this planning board decision is a condition that plan, that vendor management plan, shall be, implemented and continuous. It's not a silver bullet in this case, but it could, and I talked to Mr. Kwolek on this, I mean, it could give one additional potential layer of enforcement down the road. So the police department is number one in enforcing that exclusion. And they've offered current commitment, at least from the current chief, to pursue more vigorously enforcement of that. So the secondary layer of potential enforcement would be with the zoning enforcement officer. So unfortunately, some of this falls on the diligence of the people on Lyman Street, but if there were a vehicle that was a repeat trip down the street and you could identify that it was going to River Valley Market, then you could seek the input from the enforcement officer to approach them And usually that would get resolution. And then if it's not resolved and it's continuous, then what the city has is the availability of a $300 per day fine, which River Valley would understand that. And I think there would be the commitment to work that out before it got to that.
I think it's a very logical condition to put on a special permit, and I don't think the applicant has any objection to it, so I'd say that's a start.
That is our understanding now. When I see a vehicle continually passing through, I have to try to get a license plate or a name off the door, call the police department, and they get in contact with the vehicle and tell them.
Right, but so if we make this as a condition on the special permit, then if they fail to make reasonable efforts to stop their delivery drivers, and we can show that it's a delivery driver, then it becomes essentially a violation of their special permit, and there's potentially fines that could be assessed against. Like, I don't think it gets that far, but it does give you some teeth that then we can keep having River Valley encourage their drivers to not violate that. So I think that's.
I hope River Valley's there forever. I'm a customer up in Easthampton. I'm a shareholder, whatever that is.
And I know it's late, but I thank you for giving us the background on that, because that's certainly before most of our time on this, and so it's helpful to get the context.
And what are they called? The vendor service agreements? What is it?
They're either purchase orders or, Martha, what do you call them?
Vendor service agreements, vendor contracts, it depends on the size of the vendor, if you're talking tractor trailer, box truck, pickup, bicycle, they're all different. Some are very formal, some are not. We're already in the planning stages of contacting, but they don't want to talk about it right now because we're looking at least a year out for routing and scheduling for, the larger deliveries. So,
Okay.
But,
And we'll also put a sign reminding the truck drivers at the loading dock that when they leave, they go out to the right.
Okay, that's a good idea
Did
too.
my changes make any?
Well, the one thing I'm concerned about your changes is that it's, this sign, service and delivery only. There are going to be cars that are going to see that and not go up Lyman because it doesn't say trucks anywhere. It just says service and delivery only.
Yeah, see, so that sign on their proposal is to try to discourage customers from coming in that back entrance.
They're trying to discourage.
So that's really supposed to be a delivery only there.
But we don't want to prevent people from driving up, in their cars up Ryan Street.
Oh, I'd like to discuss.
Yeah.
That's outside of this hearing.
Jersey barrier.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Pollock, very much. Anybody else? I don't think we're going to be able to get through all this tonight, but if there's someone else who has any comments or questions regarding the traffic at this point? Okay, do we have any more questions on traffic?
No.
Okay, I think I would propose that we stop there and come back to finish up. I believe we have the solar that we still need information on.
Could I beg, so I think Attorney Seawald is the person with this, but could I beg the board to broach the subject of solar before you...
To at least hear the information?
Because there's a couple items to potentially clarify.
Okay.
In terms
Value
of...
coffee?
In terms of what? I tried to warn you guys.
Okay.
9's not too late.
No, I know. Okay.
I'm literally going to bed in half an hour. Just letting you know.
Whether you've gone home or not? Okay, so let's dive in on solar. I don't think we're going to be able to wrap this all up tonight, but let's at least hear where we are with solar, because that was all new information to us.
If I can editorialize, I would urge you to look at your solar bylaw.
Yeah.
Because it's...
Yes.
I know.
It gave me a headache.
Well, especially for this project, because this is unlike any of the solar stuff we've had to deal with, and
it's clear that the solar provisions of your ordinance were not intended for this.
Right.
They were intended for fields of solar panels. And so I have prepared a set of findings on what I believe are all of the required findings for the solar facility. It's my view that this is not a large solar facility. Okay? Your definitions have 3 different kinds of facilities: solar facility, large solar facility, and small solar facility. It is neither large because it is not primarily for sale to the grid, and it's not small because it's too large. So it's a solar system, but it's neither large nor small. And so, in my view, all of the requirements for large solar systems do not apply here. Even though I did propose some, notwithstanding that findings, I don't believe they apply here. So, just to let you know where we are.
Yeah, can you explain, because I mean, some of the pictures in here seem to be contradictory. We didn't have any real details last time we met, so sort of what the proposal is.
Okay, so the proposal is, and if anybody wants to jump in, please do, is to have solar panels as a canopy in the parking lot, and solar on the roof, and there's one other area.
So these pictures here, right?
Those are just samples of canopy solar. So right now, we're in the process of negotiating a power purchase agreement with a company to build and own this solar facility, which is very typical. It's much like the refrigeration systems, you know, the co-op will lease those, they don't own them. And so we will have a power purchase agreement, will allow them to use our property to put the facilities on the property. We will be buying all of the energy through the power purchase agreement. In the unlikely event that there's extra power, of course, it could go to the grid, but that's certainly not primary here. And so we're in the process of negotiating that the power purchase agreement. And so there are no specifications available at this point because nothing's been designed. We're sort of in the beginning phases of that agreement. And it's extremely likely we're going to get through. We need to do the power purchase agreement, and then the company has to get its financing and design. And if all of those fall into place, obviously we'll go forward. But some of that is also out of our control. And so we would be asking for an approval without a requirement on solar as well. And again, nobody here wants the solar panels on this more than we do. But we do have to account for the small, probability that it's all going to fall apart and we can't find somebody to own and build this for us and sell us the power.
So I agree. I mean, so Jeff and I spent a lot of time last time before the meeting trying to figure out how to apply the solar bylaw to this project. And there's certain parts of it, the decommissioning, for example. This is not like a farm field where we need to bring it back to its natural state. We'd no more likely need a decommissioning bond for this than they would to, tear down your building if you go out of business and put that back to a farm field, right? That's not something that we take care of. So I think there's parts of it that clearly don't apply. The parts I'm sort of still struggling with is, we've done several of these in the last couple of years, and we've spent a lot of time on sort of public safety, keeping people away from certain areas, making sure that people aren't in any risk for various things, and that they also can't create any, problems by either vandalizing intentionally, unintentionally, things like that. And so we don't have any of those details. So I'm struggling with how we can sort of give a blanket solar canopy approval.
I'd like to go a step further and even add in that I'm not as comfortable as you are with the lack of decommissioning.
Okay, that's fair. I shouldn't speak for. I'm certainly speaking for myself. But so there are certain aspects of the project that, and I mean, maybe it's as simple as approving it without solar, and when you get the financing and the design, you can come back and modify it. But I don't know how, without knowing where the specific items are going to be, how these things are going to be secured, how they're going to protect people, and
how much energy it's generating.
That sort of is a hard thing for us to sort of give a blanket approval. You have some information to add here?
Yes, Jonathan Wright Builders. So we've been doing solar for about 30 years.
Yep.
And the public safety operational concerns that you express are very real.
Mm-hmm.
And they are taken care of in the building permit process, the engineering that's required to get a separate building permit for the solar equipment. I don't think that that's something you need to concern yourself about, because that's all under professional engineering stamp. It's all electrical engineering. These things are nowhere near as dangerous as your average telephone pole and the other things that we allow to be scattered around building sites. So there's nothing unusual about this equipment. They're inverters, they're protected, they're grounded. It's not any more dangerous than in some cases.
There's going to be a transformer somewhere.
There are transformers, yes.
Where?
Well, so what we've asked is that when we get our engineering done, that we bring the plans to the building department, and that they're analyzed for a building permit, an electrical permit. That those are the safety standards that the Commonwealth has that are perfectly adequate for everything to do with the construction of this part of the project. It's a structure.
Right. So there have been some discussions of what the applicant is asking for the planning board to consider is sort of the concept of solar on this property. So there's gonna be roof mounted on the building. It's the canopy, and then there are some ground mounted, there's a couple ground mounted things. So, yeah, I think I would just add a little bit of a clarification to what Mr. Wright said, is that the structure to be considered for the planning board would be to feel comfortable with the concept. So if decommissioning is an issue, we should touch on that in a minute, but the safety or the construction methodology to get them up would be regulated by the building department, but the structure that we talked about was the concept is approved potentially by the planning board, and then prior to the issuance of a building permit, those plans and information are brought to this board prior to issuance of a building permit, so that you would then have the underground structure elements proposed. You would have, you know, the exact specification of what the canopy was going to be.
Okay.
But, you know, the question I think being asked is the concept of a canopy, you know, array over the parking, whether the site is suitable for that. So there's a couple findings in there: site suitability. My one question of the findings would be, well, I think Mr. Zarvis asked a question about the inverter and noise. So those are things that the board is talking about with other ones. So if you could touch on inverter and noise, I think is, you know, that's a question that kind of circles around and might need to be known. But then the other last one was the ordinance was envisioned for fields and possibly next to houses, so it's allowed everywhere. The 50-foot setback for vegetation, so it's just something that the board spent about 9 hearings, maybe. How many hours would that be? Talking about the 50-foot buffer. And so, you know, where would this array be with respect to the 50-foot buffer? Do you need variation from that, or is that so?
This is not a large array, so that provision applies to large solar facilities. This is not a large solar facility, so that doesn't apply. That said, I mean, this is buffered by a large parking lot, by all of the greenery going up to the you know, to Route 10. It's buffered on every side, and you know, this meets the intent of your ordinance, even if we're squeezing it in a little bit.
Does that include, so
the ground mounted ones are the only one I'm unsure of, because obviously the parking lot and the rooftop ones are there wouldn't be an issue with a buffer, but I'm not clear where the ground mounted ones are planning.
They're on the southerly side of along here.
Between the parking lot and the wetlands and that slope.
Okay. Okay, I do remember talking about that last time.
Yeah,
That's right.
So there's plenty of buffer there too.
on that image though, the box at the top, is that an inverter?
No.
What was that?
That's a staff break area.
Okay, so then that distance along that parking lot, so the canopy, so that was one of my questions, is if you, and then if you draw the line going right to left along the top of the parking lot there.
Right, yep.
You know, where's the canopy with respect to that back property line? Does it meet the 50 feet? I mean, because there's vegetation back there.
Right, the canopy here, and across here. So at no point is any of this equipment, and so an inverter is a technology that's been evolving, and there has been a process of traditionally you get noise from transformers. Transformers have at some point and at some scales been mounted on the panels. That is not the case with this technology now. It's not efficient.
Right.
Inverter noise, there is some noise. It's 60 dB and it drops at 6 dB per meter, so it's 0 at the property line.
So I'm guessing that
there's no place at which we're anywhere near having any generation noise crossing the property line or in any way impacting
the transformer's located somewhere with underground wires, I'm guessing connected to because it's not connected, as you said.
Right.
So they are somewhere.
Because this is a grid-connected system, and the other contingency that Mr. Seawald didn't mention, but the grid interconnect process is laborious, and they won't talk to us until we have a permit. So, you know, it's the chickens and the eggs are having a good time tonight.
Oh, yes.
So, but anyway, our power service is coming in from Route 10.
Yep.
And where typically we have inverter arrays inside the building because we recapture the heat. But it's a complicated system.
Yep.
But what you're not going to see is large vaults outside near the property line buzzing away. And We're
So-
gonna bring you proof of that with all the engineering.
Yep.
So you can get a good look at it and get comfortable. You just don't have it now.
So Jeff, procedurally, the way you were just talking about it, so we could approve a special permit, but before they could be granted a building permit for the solar panels, they would come back with engineering for the solar panels?
Would that be a separate permit?
No,
No.
I mean, the way it's
just be a
envisioned
condition.
is that approving the concept, so there's one, there's a couple really specific findings, and it's right on page 1 of 9, so it's the first one. General requirements for all solar facilities, and so a permit shall be granted unless the permit granting authority, which is the planning board, finds in writing that there is substantial evidence that A, the specific site is not appropriate for location of such use. Or B, a nuisance is expected to be created, or C, adequate and appropriate facilities will not be provided. So at the highest level, that's suggesting that the planning board needs to look at the concept of solar on
Right.
this property. And it didn't seem like there was any necessarily objections last time. The rest are dotting i's and crossing t's, so at some point there would be proof of liability insurance. There is currently site control. There would be utility notification once the process is farther along. You get into other things like lighting. So lighting would be a detail, but the lighting requirement is that lighting of parts of the solar energy facility shall be limited to that required for safety and operational purposes and be shielded from abutting property owners. So if my understanding is correct, that the canopy especially would have, if any, lighting underneath shooting straight down onto the parking area. So
But they already have lighting for the parking lot.
Yeah.
I mean,
Correct.
We're redundant to.
So
the lighting for the parking lot will be provided under these canopies.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's actually much more local lighting than you get with these
Right.
typical high tops.
Do we have a complete lighting plan for this?
Maybe.
Harry's got a question.
How you get the snow up at the top of those panels?
It slides off, so these are butterfly.
I mean, it looks pretty big, looking at it this way. You got cars parked, those are gigantic. I mean, you're gonna get somebody up here with a snow shovel, or how are you gonna get that out there?
The butterfly wings are typically, and this is, still has to be calculated, typically about 4 feet apart, and that's aligned with the rain garden underneath, and the snow and water go into that.
How about a substantial wind, like a hurricane or something, getting underneath that thing? Will that withstand that?
Same way you would engineer a gas station canopy or a hotel canopy, you engineer it.
Is there anything like this in this area we can take a look at?
They're all over UMass.
That top picture is UMass,
Is that right?
Yeah,
That's what this is
Peter
here?
Whalen's put one in his parking lot at 71 King Street in Northampton, if you want to go take a look.
So there's a big.
So it's been around a while
yeah.
then, huh?
Personally, I think it's groovy, and I want to approve. I want to approve it. The decommissioning thing for me is really weird because I do know that there's some question after 20 years: is it viable? The materials degrade over time. As much as if we think we're super advanced, we're really not. And these are carports. So what happens after 20 years? Do you just ignore the fact that there's solar on them, and they remain as carports? Does it become an eyesore?
Sure. What would you do
decommissioning for me is
with
a
any,
concern.
if you're a successful business, which this will be, with however many cars those were, coming in and out, if you had something dilapidated on your property that no longer worked, what would you do? You would do the same thing you would do if your entry canopy wasn't any good, if your brick oven wasn't any good, if your sign fell down. It's just a normal property maintenance.
That's why, to me, the decommissioning doesn't really apply here, because if all you have is a field of panels, when they don't work, it's often easier, certainly if there's no bond, it's cheaper and easier to just walk away.
Yeah.
But here, this is a secondary, tertiary, like minor purpose related to the co-op, so it's unfathomable to me that they would walk away from those, but it's also not, it's not disturbing, right? So there are the minor ones that are on the side, but it's not the purpose of it. So I think even if those stopped operating, they're either going to be an eyesore and they're going to bother them, or they're not. But we didn't convert acres of farmland into solar fields, so it doesn't seem like it's the same goal. I mean, frankly, look at the car dealership, right? That's been out of business for years. You would love to have had a decommissioning bond for that, but that's not how any of this works. So
And in a certain sense, you don't require decommissioning bonds for the boiler that goes in someone's house that produces heat.
Or every parking lot people put in, you put in a giant parking lot and then the use changes and you don't need the 100 spots. So I think some of that, and I mean, listen, it's not 100% clear, but that's sort of my take on it, is that I don't think that's necessarily the intent, but I would say that I certainly think that's true with the parking lot and the roof mounted. The stuff that's on the ground, I guess there's maybe some more wiggle room there, but it just doesn't seem like there's the risk that you have in a regular commercial facility.
One of the things that drives any business a little nuts are insurance regulations.
Yep.
Right. So long after you've forgotten about what else you could possibly want them to do, the loss prevention engineers will be looking around to see if there's a potential risk. And those folks are all over their game. So as long as they have a business there, loss prevention people are going to be looking around for public hazards, and those are your eyes and ears, on steroids, really, because they're all about risk. So I would, offer that up. That's different than a field someplace that's.
I do think you're right. It's different. You've made very compelling points, and I'm motivated by the comments.
Jeff, you got something else?
Just, the ordinance itself has a section 7.3.7, which is abandonment or decommissioning. So, we grappled with this a little bit with the last one, and the planning board put a condition on to reflect this section. So it says removal requirements. Any solar energy facility which has reached the end of its useful life or has been abandoned shall be removed. And it goes on. And so, the board could potentially apply that as a standard condition that if it's abandoned and done, it shall be removed. And then where it's different is a little bit later in the ordinance, it pops up for financial surety. So that's where the permit granting authority may require the applicant for large-scale solar facilities to provide a bond to cover the removal in the event that the city must remove the facility. So there's a question, I think the last question, whether it happens right now or, this is presumed to, are we presuming to continue this to make findings and things like that? But the last question is whether the financial surety would be required in this instance. So there's a may, not a shall there. So the first section says it shall be removed if it's reached its useful life, whereas the secondary, the bond that you've been a little bit more accustomed to dealing with is a may. And so that's sort of the last question. The rest of this are technical elements related to the project that you would see before, and make sure that it's still at the setback and it's still carport. That was the last thing, if I may. The drainage, so you mentioned the snow melt, and that's a factor in the site plan, is that not?
It's factored into the site plan,
Can you just describe,
stormwater.
so if the planning board approves it, do you need to come back for a site plan change, and can you just describe how that's factored in real quick? I mean,
Well, so the stormwater for these arrays that are over the carports is all intended to be directed to the center islands, 4-foot stone drip strip. So it's going to function. It's designed to function with a parking lot runoff or
so that's where the water would end up, whether you've got the carports or not.
And the Conservation Commission, did they understand that there would be additional potential snow melt coming off of?
Yes, I mean, effectively it's going to replace whatever's it's covering up. So it doesn't change the volume of snow or water that comes down.
Just one point here. I know we're long into your goodwill here. So these canopies intercept the incoming solar rays, which keeps the parking lot cooler, which reduces heat island effect, which is an enormous global warming factor. So that's a great side effect. Keeps the cars cooler, and the snow that's coming down the butterflies is not being collected and scraped around and covered with salt. So the salt
oil and all that other stuff.
So it has a lot of side benefits that come along with it. The other thing this is a great adventure, and we're really excited about it. Grocery stores don't usually try to do this, but this is 2019. Global warming is real. We have no natural gas. We would pay a fortune for propane, and sooner or later we got to stop burning stuff. So this is an attempt to really bring to the city, this is how we could do this, and this can work. and it will be beautiful, and it have the expression of its energy efficiency part of the architecture, not just stuck on off in a field somewhere. So we really like that it's integrated into the whole business.
And if I may just
Complete agreement for me.
last
Before you do,
thing.
I want to say one thing, Jeff, about your comments there about the two different sections that we can put in. I love the idea of keeping the first section in this as that, you know, that if it falls into disrepair, it shall be removed.
Yeah.
But I think that an element of trust has been engendered here from the comments that you have, that no surety should be required for it. And I think that's maybe the kind of condition we should go for.
The other, just as a matter of process, and I've done this on several occasions, I've gotten, as Jeff said, the approval of the concept, and then we come back at a meeting and we show you the plans, and then you decide whether these plans are consistent with what we've been talking about, and if they're not, you got to go to a hearing, and then you schedule a hearing, and we do it that way. But I have a feeling it's going to be, you know, you're going to see this and say, oh, okay, this is what we talked about. Because so that would be our proposal, with a condition that we come back at a meeting with all the plans, with all the information about insurance and specs and all of the rest, and you'll decide whether we need to go to a hearing.
Okay.
Prior to the building permit, which gives the board that last ability to review all the details.
Yep. Anybody here who has any comments or questions on the solar issue at this point? Or anything else at that point?
A lot of head shaking.
All right, so.
Actually, as far as the.
Can you come up to the podium and get your name and address real quick?
Hi, I'm Philip Lamb, 32 Groveland. I was extremely interested in the O'Neill sign, intersection widening towards the west, because taking the left onto O'Neill coming south on Route 10, it's ridiculous. And I was surprised that they didn't initially have that in the initial design when they put the intersection in there, since there's actually plenty of room to go to the west for the light post that holds the signal light on is way over to the west. Yet they were forcing people to cram into a small area, and it's just ridiculous. So I'm glad that there's been mentioned and that there's agreement with the state that they call it an F, which I'm really glad to hear. But when do you think that's actually going to possibly happen? Before this? Could it happen before the?
So what they've explained earlier tonight is that the process, it's already been filed with the state, all of the various things they need approval from Mass DOT, and Mass DOT won't act until there is a permit on the project. So I don't think we know. It also sounds like there's varying degrees of risk as far as what's going to be approved and what's not. Some of them seem like slam dunks, others might be a little bit more of a stretch. I would think the widening for that left turn lane is probably one of the ones that's more of a reach, because it's a little more intensive on the infrastructure as opposed to sort of changing the entrance, where we're going to just do that there. The city and the applicant will do that to Lyman. So I don't think any of us can guarantee that that will happen. I think that everyone involved will have their fingers crossed that it does.
I'm sorry.
But it's the state. As far as I understand it, the state won't sort of give a conditional approval. We'll agree to do this if you get your supermarket permit approved. So it's really got to be, we have to act first, which is why we can hope that these changes happen, but we have to make sure that all of the traffic mitigation that we can control is going to be sufficient, because anything else that the state does is going to have to be a bonus. We can't be counting on that.
Okay, but at least it seems that they're aware of the situation.
Yep.
And the potential is there for cooperation.
And I think the applicants made a good point. I think that they're as invested in as anybody in making sure that people aren't sitting there waiting at red lights and trying to make the turn either in or out or anywhere in the neighborhood. So I think that they will be diligent in trying to get that, and hopefully the state will be agreeable.
Now, the second question is, when you're coming north on Route 10 and you want to take a left into River Valley, is there going to be a separate middle lane for you to?
So that's the other proposal that's one of the other proposals that requires Mass DOT approval. So that's in the same category.
And how long of a third lane will there be?
That proposal, is there a concrete proposal? Do you know what the?
We've got plans. I don't know what the specific queuing length is, but it's in accordance with the DOT standards.
Yeah.
For a left turn lane. It's right, 3 or 4 cars at least.
That's right. Okay.
Stopped. Yeah.
So we'll keep our fingers crossed on that one too, I guess.
Well, it's a great addition, it'd be nice if the state would consider having from the Rotary all the way to O'Neill be a third lane road. So that's on Groveland, and it would make so much sense, people trying to get into businesses and during, you know, traffic hour and stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a whole bunch of compression going on.
Thank you very much.
So the realignment of Lyman is something that you would expect to go along with the project. And
It will be, that will be done while we're building the project.
Okay.
We do not want road work around the store after it opens.
Right.
So we're gonna do this before it opens.
Okay, so the realignment.
It also sounds like that's the easier ask from Mass DOT.
No doubt about it.
Okay.
Right, so in terms of, you know, if there, so the board's gonna continue, because it's 9:20. But in terms of the next meeting, in terms of understanding what is being discussed, so the realignment of Lyman would be part of the permit.
Right,
Part of
a
what the planning board
condition.
is part of the conditions, along with the the right hook coming out of River Valley onto Lyman. That's part of what is a commitment.
That's right.
Then the left turn lane on Route 10 would be something that the planning board says that would be great, but we're not requiring that as part of our approval, because you.
Or
wanna
we could do something as simple as making conditions that the applicant will take all reasonable steps to ensure approval from Mass DOT for both of those left turn lanes, right? Like, I don't think they're gonna drop the ball on it, but I would want them to make the effort, and if DOT vetoes it, then they do.
We haven't petitioned DOT to put another lane on O'Neill.
Right,
Right.
on O'Neill,
I
right.
just want to be clear.
Yeah,
I thought
yeah.
there was some confusion here. We've got, I believe, 3 applications into Mass DOT. The driveway, the curb cut, realigning, Lyman,
Right.
and the turn lane.
The left turn lane
Left turn lane into the
River Valley
Right.
Co-op, yeah.
But otherwise, your language of they'll make all reasonable
Yeah,
effort
take
is.
reasonable steps. I mean, I think that we all acknowledge that Mass DOT can kill it, and there's nothing that we can.
Right, and the other thing that Mass DOT has been known to do, and you can jump in here if I'm wrong about this, is that once they got you to do the 4 turn lane, why don't we also have you do further up? And, you know, and let me just say, the grocery business does not support road construction. And I'm saying the turn lane also, the numbers we got on the turn lane are huge. They're
For-
really huge.
For cost?
For cost.
Yeah.
Like 7 figures.
Yeah.
And so, you know, when you talk about reasonable, cost has to be factored into that reasonableness calculus as well.
So I guess just remind me, you guys have submitted an application already at this point for
Yes.
those 3
Yes.
features. And so it's really a matter of waiting for Mass DOT to either thumbs up or thumbs down, although they may come back and say thumbs up if.
Right.
And put some conditions on there.
That's right.
Jeff is in contact with Mass DOT every couple of weeks.
Yep.
So it's not a wait and see, it's a let's go.
Yep, okay. Okay, we'll have to give that some thought, I guess, but obviously, we can't condition this on Mass DOT approval, or I don't think we need to here, because I think that the mitigation that they can undertake sort of unilaterally or with the city will be sufficient, at least from my perspective.
That's what's important to acknowledge, is that the mitigation proposed, the Lyman realignment in particular, is the key for the planning board
Right.
to issue the special permit. Everything else would be desirable.
It would be
subject
bonus,
to Mass
but
DOT.
not
So
a requirement.
So I think that's clear for me. So I think, you know, my understanding is the board would talk about continuing, and I think with the input so far, you know, I can draft some potential findings and some potential conditions for the next meeting, which, you know, the applicant would see earlier than some of the documents that came through tonight. So if that's acceptable to the board, that's kind of like some guidance I think I have.
Great.
So when?
2 weeks? Is that enough time?
Yeah, so I think if you're talking about the 19th, I think that works. The other item on the agenda is a restaurant downtown, which is a site plan approval.
Yep.
So it should not rise to, it's not cannabis, you know, it's not something complex really, so.
Did you want to move that to 7 on the 19th as a second item, or 6:30?
6:30.
Let's do 6:30.
Yeah.
Just to be safe.
Okay.
I motion to continue River Valley Co-op seeking a special permit to 6:30 on March 19th.
Before we second and vote on that, is that okay for the applicant? You guys okay with the 19th?
We were planning that.
Okay, perfect. All right, second, anyone?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very
Opposed?
much.
All right,
Thank you.
thanks, folks.
Second that motion.
Chris, you gonna be able to get home before you go to sleep, or?
Can I just, there's a new business item?
Yeah, can we
So-
talk about the
yep.
zero lot line for like 45 minutes?
So, it's on the agenda as an introduction.
Yeah.
Of a possible zero lot line amendment to table 6-1 for mixed use mill industrial district. So, I just wanted to say that, so that in the event that in the next month, somehow I have to figure out the exact process, whether such a zoning amendment starts specifically with ordinance, or it can start with planning board.
It can start with us.
Okay, so there may be a request, it's associated initially with 1 Ferry Street.
Okay.
But it's not something that you just take one parcel, so it would be potentially applied to the whole mill industrial district. So the observation is that there are multiple mill buildings where property lines are immediately adjacent to the buildings.
Yep.
And there's a potential desire to replicate that on 1
Oh, I
Ferry
see,
Street.
okay. It wouldn't be out of character kind of argument.
Right, and right now, the way the zoning reads is it's not clear that you could build a new building at 0.
Yep.
Whereas
The
existing buildings have
buildings are.
cut lines, and there's a process for that, but a new building, it would need a different zoning.
When do you want to talk about this?
Well, it's unclear. It's not officially submitted in any form yet, but it's something that could
Okay, so
appear
this is a heads
quickly,
up, and
yes.
someone else may push it for us.
Someone may come to you
Yep.
with a request to consider it, and
Okay.
I don't know if it would fit in terms of notification process. I don't know if it could happen for March 19th. I think it would be in early April if it moves forward also. I just wanted to give you a heads up.
Perfect. All right.
That was the purpose of
Anybody have anything else they want to talk about? Chris, any breaking news you want to
I
discuss?
would like to talk about the Book of War and Peace. What did you think about that
A motion to adjourn.
47th chapter?
I second. All in favor?
Aye. And a
Thank
reminder,
you all
our next
for your
meeting is the
patience.
12th.